Welcome back to the channel. This is Trendy Storm and you are watching second and final part of What If Naruto Learned His True Heritage Before the Chunin exams. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no time, let's start the story.
Ibiki gave another nod. It was a sensible, logical, and probably accurate conclusion. Apart from what Anko had told him, he didn't know much about the curse mark itself, and it seemed to be a more potent version than the one he had given Anko 13 years prior. Ibiki's eyes widened as he said, Sasuke didn't like Naruto getting in his way and he threatened to kill him. There was no playing around either. I could sense the full intent of it rolling off of Sasuke. By now the Auto team had ran, leaving behind that girl who was frozen in fear of whatever chakra Naruto and Sasuke were using. Sasuke still tried to attack the girl, though she wasn't any threat to them, and Naruto began to protect her too. When she passed out, Naruto called for Fu, the girl from the AME team, to take her to safety. When she appeared, Sasuke attacked her as well. The whole time, Naruto only attacked back to protect others. He was even injured by Sasuke's fireball technique. After Sasuke used another fire attack on Naruto, he pinned him against a tree. That's when Naruto began to use some weird and extremely frightening red chakra she felt when she heard the one that had immobilized her. He overpowered Sasuke. All he did was squeeze his wrist and then he hit him in the gut, making the purple chakra go back into Sasuke. After that, the red chakra left Naruto too, but before we could go to him, he ran. Near the conclusion, Ibiki became agitated, questioning whether Naruto had somehow lost control of the Kyuubi. But his worries were allayed when he was told that he had only used the chakra to defeat Sasuke. Although he felt conflicted about interfering when Sasuke chose to attack the Auto team, he was genuinely impressed by the boy. Though these were Chunin exams, he could see why Naruto would have attempted to stop him. Sasuke was justified in attacking them. Ibiki wasn't suggesting that it would have been preferable. Sasuke would have been free to use the curse mark's power however he pleased if Naruto hadn't stepped in. However, he was not at all pleased to learn that Sasuke had threatened to murder a comrade. Ibiki looked around at all the genin and asked, "Can this be confirmed by all here present?" The majority of the room nodded almost immediately. But then he looked down at Sakura and Ino. When Ino fidgeted with a frown on her face, Sakura was about to cry. She flinched under Ibiki's glare as she looked up at him. She also nodded tremblingly. "And you?" Sakura had a tear running down her cheek as she glanced up at Ibiki. She glanced at the other members of her team in the room. The majority of them regarded her with disdain, probably suspecting that the teen with the pink hair would fabricate an excuse or stand in for Sasuke. Hinata's expression was the worst, while Ino's was empathetic but critical. Sakura lowered her head in defeat after sitting under Ibiki's stern gaze for a few seconds. "It's all true." Her words, which were barely audible but heard by everyone, escaped her lips like air. Her eyes were fixed on the ground in front of her, tears slamming into the stone floor as the now crying preteen missed the polite nods directed at her. Ibiki didn't feel sorry for the girl and thought it was almost pitiful that she would cry at this time. Since they were ninja, it was easy to predict what would occur on the field by making a decision as straightforward as this. When he spoke with them earlier that day, he believed he had demonstrated that point. "You say that the Uchiha was already unconscious when you all arrived. Then you were the only one there to know what happened to him, right?" Ibiki inquired to Sakura. Her eyes were pink and beginning to swell as she looked up. Yes. We were attacked." The Anbu captain interrupted, saying, "Stop. I'll discuss that with you privately." Many of the other people in the room made a note of it in the hopes of questioning Sakura about it later. The door opened as there was a brief silence in the room. Fu's holding room Anbu gestured for Ibiki to approach. Ibiki gave a nod and silently brushed the genin away. The genin all sighed in relief as the door was securely closed behind him. While some started thinking about everything that had happened and others were talking to each other, Ino turned to face her old friend. Sakura struggled to contain her tears as she trembled. After a brief moment of hesitation, the preteen blonde chose to assume the larger role and approached the girl with the flowers. For some strange reason, Sakura thought it was Ibiki when she looked up, startled at Ino. Ino knew it wasn't a good question, but she had nothing better to say than, "Hey, you okay?" "No," whimpered Sakura. "Naruto and Sasuke were fighting again, but this time was the worse. I don't know what's wrong with either one of them. Ever since Naruto changed, Sasuke's been worried about him. And now Sasuke's changed too, thanks to..." Sakura stopped. Ino gently inquired, "What happened, Sakura?" "Before we got to the clearing?" But from one of the room's shadows, a kunai was buried in the ground in front of the two girls. Classified. The two girls shivered when they realized that an Anbu could have easily been aimed at a vital part of their bodies because it appeared and vanished in an instant. Sakura muttered, I guess I can't tell you. Ino wrapped Sakura in his arm. Ino wiped a tear from the younger girl's cheek and said, all right, then let's at least deal with what we can. In the hopes that Ino would at least share her sentiments, Sakura cleaned the remainder herself and fell silent. Ino, however, was going to attempt to explain this to herself as well as Sakura. She needed to figure out what all of this meant, especially the feelings she had been experiencing lately, even though she didn't really understand it. She was going to start a new chapter in her life right then and there. Sakura, Naruto has changed, and maybe you don't realize it, but it's for the better. In some ways. And Sasuke? Well, he hasn't changed at all. And I'm not talking about what happened in the clearing. Then Sakura gasped, Wah. What do you mean Sasuke-kun hasn't changed? Now that she could acknowledge it, Ino suppressed a laugh. You're not stupid, Sakura. Haven't you ever wondered why Sasuke is so cold to us? Why he never agrees to go out with us, even when we're not acting like rabid fangirls? She said. Oh my god, Ino. Sasuke-kun is not gay, Sakura exclaimed, grabbing the attention of others through her loud voice. After pausing and flushing, Ino made the decision to burst out laughing. Sakura arched an eyebrow and gave the blonde head a fierce look. Are you serious? That's not what I meant at all, haha. Sakura pouted and flushed too, and Ino wiped her eyes. Although, I wouldn't put it past him. By this point, everyone else had turned to listen and were laughing with the Yamanaka. Neji even had a slight grin on his face as he stood. The preteen with the pink hair demanded angrily, that's not funny, Ino. So what did you mean then? Ino calmed down for a few more seconds and went on. I meant that Sasuke isn't as great as you and I made him out to be in our imaginations. He's always been cold, and he acts like he doesn't want anything to do with us. You're on his team, so you spent more time with him, and you said it yourself. He's the same as he was in the academy, probably worse. The only person he actually opens up and talks to is Naruto, but even that's starting to wear thin. Sakura halted herself when she realized she was repeating something pretentious. That's not true. Naruto is always bugging Sasuke-kun, so, she genuinely considered what Ino had said before shaking her head. No, I'm the one always bugging Sasuke-kun. Ino, who believed everything she was saying to be true, urged, what else? However, following Sasuke, Sakura's and Ino's paths drastically diverged. He finds us. Me annoying. He gives Naruto far more respect than me, because he deserves it. Naruto never did anything to me and I treated him like crap, even now. Ino gave a nod. She was also the one who mistreated Naruto as a child. She recalled when he shared his lunch with her because she was on a diet and had fainted, but she wasn't sure if he did. Even though she had repeatedly insulted him while he was attempting to assist her, he was still concerned for her. She stopped making fun of Naruto after that incident because he was a really good person. She also didn't make an effort to get to know the older boy, and she was now regretting it. Though she did demonstrate maturity by viewing the situation from a different angle, Sakura stated, Sasuke-kun. Sasuke isn't all bad though. He just needs someone there to be strong for him. She chose to view Sasuke as a person and a shinobi rather than as a boy toy. Ino. We messed up. I messed up. Naruto. Sasuke. All of you. I bet all of you are stronger than me. I wasted so much time, and Kakashi. Sensei hasn't really taught us anything. Again tears were falling. Ino. I could die here. I would have died if Naruto hadn't shown up. And Sasuke. This all just so fucked up. Sakura's language made Ino blink, but she gave the girls a pat in return. She was pleased that Sakura maintained her position as their class's most intelligent female genin. At least so far, she appeared to comprehend everything. At this point, Ino had to begin to believe all she had told Sakura. Sakura felt as though a burden had been removed from her chest and was now hanging over her head. The first step was realization. Could she really change, though? Or would she stay the same girl she was beginning to wish she wasn't? Her primary concern, however, was still what she could do to help Naruto and Sasuke. Ibiki wandered the corridors again, lost in contemplation. Since that would raise more questions than he currently had time for, he wanted to have something resolved before Naruto and Anko arrived. He had 3 things to do simultaneously. He thus made 2 basic shadow clones and flared one hand sign, taking a cue from a certain blonde. They left without having to tell the clones why. While the other clone went back the other way to talk to Sakura about how Sasuke had obtained the curse seal, the first clone went to the cell where the AIM team was located. The real Ibiki made his way to the cell where Sasuke was. Call it a cell, if you will. Even Hinata and her Byakugan couldn't sense it. It was more of a separate room from the others. Anbu was not concealed as they patrolled the sanctum of the floors below, which was located deep within the tower, several floors below. Ibiki approached a pair of doors, each flanked by blue flames. The door's Anbu guard moved aside to let Ibiki in, and he quietly closed the door after him. Several of the same blue flame torches were perched on pillars inside the room. It was the only source of light and gave the space a gloomy atmosphere. As he moved toward the middle of the room, Ibiki spoke to everyone else present other than Sasuke. He inquired, "How is coming along?" "All I did was apply the overseal. If Sasuke can resist, he can stop the effects of the seal. However, I've never seen anything like this before. It's far from an expert seal, but it emits a poisonous chakra in the process. I can't undo it without knowing the base form of the poison chakra." Kakashi spoke while continuing to stare at the cruise mark. Sasuke took a seat in the center of what looked like a big seal on the ground. His shirt was off, and he had black marks all over his neck, chest, and back that were woven into elaborate patterns. The other two were left wondering what he might be thinking as he sat quietly. Ibiki apologized, and Kakashi nodded in agreement. Of course Orochimaru must have come up with some other type of monstrosity. Hell, I doubt we could even discern a fraction of the chakra without a medic nin on Tsunade's level. The copycat nin applied chakra while kneeling and covering the cursed seal with a hand. Before the marks surrounding the mark started to fade into Sasuke's skin, he winced. For the first time since being taken into the tower, Sasuke said, "Kakashi. Sensei." After the curse mark had faded, it had appeared as though his memory was a little hazy. The man with silver hair said, "Oh, what is it?" He said softly, as though he were also telling himself, I threatened Naruto." Sasuke couldn't believe he had done it, and it sounded like a question. Kakashi just grinned, still largely unaware of what was going on. He waved it away, saying, "He'll be fine. You threaten him all the time, no big deal." He nearly recoiled, though, when Sasuke spun on him with his eyes fixed on the Sharingan. Sasuke spat out, "I threatened to kill him. I would never. I wouldn't." Sasuke clenched his fist and gritted his teeth, suppressing his rage. His intention was to hit the genin. This might have been the worst time Kakashi had ever dismissed Naruto. Favoritism by Kakashi, even if it was directed at him, always annoyed him. Sasuke and Naruto were rivals, not fierce enemies, even if Sasuke had forgotten at one point. Naruto's recent gaze on Sasuke suggested that both of them had forgotten. However, he recalled what transpired during their battle with Zabuza and Haku following his encounter with Orochimaru in the Forest of Death. We're supposed to protect each other. Kakashi turned to face Ibiki, who remained silent and observed the action unfold. Knowing that he was on his own with this one, Kakashi sighed. "Sasuke, Naruto's bounced back from a lot worse. Don't worry yourself about it." When Sasuke yelled at his sensei, neither heard Ibiki sigh. Sasuke's fists clenched until they bled. "Bounced back from worse? Bounced back from worse? Who the fuck says that?" he exclaimed. "You call yourself a sensei, but all you ever do is train me to use my Sharingan, and that's rarely. We haven't had a team assignment since we've come back from Wave Country, and that was last month. Me, Naruto, and Sakura barely see each other, and when we did go to train you always showed up late. What happened, Hitaki? Weren't you the one preaching about how those who disobey the rules are trash, but those who abandon their comrades are worse than that?" Sasuke moaned and gripped Kakashi's neck with one hand, but despite his worried expression, he continued to attack Kakashi. Kakashi extended his hand to touch him, but Sasuke slapped it roughly away. "Now I tell you something that I can't even stand to remember and you say it's not a big deal. Fine then, Hitaki. What if you threatened to kill someone you care about and have full intentions on doing just that? What if you would have succeeded if your sensei was a neglectful, perverted bastard?" Sasuke's rage started to subside. He is too exhausted to go on ranting because of the pain from the curse mark and overseal. "Sasuke. Fuck you, Kakashi," he exclaimed, barely audible above a whisper, while inhaling deeply. He asked Ibiki, utterly ignoring the genin in front of him, "Where is Naruto?" He had run out of things to say to him. Ibiki replied, "On his way to the tower. And did you admit to threatening Uzumaki Naruto?" Ibiki's icy tone made Sasuke wince. He didn't want to be reminded of that, so he looked down. Kakashi got up before he could respond in the affirmative. Ibiki-san, you must know that the curse seal forces the will of Orochimaru upon the user. "Stop it!" screamed Sasuke. "Stop doing that. If I was Naruto, you wouldn't have tried to make an excuse." Ibiki was far more composed than the situation seemed to require when he said, "Sasuke, that's enough insubordination." Sasuke continued to glare at his sensei, but his stare forced him to keep his mouth shut. As he spoke, Ibiki met Kakashi's eyes directly. "As your former Anbu captain, I'm highly and utterly disappointed and disgusted with what I just heard and witnessed." Kakashi immediately fell to one knee at the tone, head down and fist on the floor. "Forgive me, sensei." Ibiki sighed again, something he did a lot that day. "You know what you were taught, Kakashi. You had me and the fourth Hokage himself teach you. I don't understand how you could have turned out like this. As for the curse seal, from Anko's report, it does enforce a part of Orochimaru's will on the victim. However, it's only to strengthen their darker thoughts. If that person was to have a pure heart, it's theory that the curse seal wouldn't work." At that, Sasuke's eyes widened. After talking with Fu earlier, Ibiki had been building a key, which he finally released with a grim nod. "So, that means..." The enormous weight appeared to cause the two members of Team 7 to contract. "Somewhere deep inside you, you truly wanted to kill Naruto." Ibiki, the clone, was once again in the Omegakure team's holding cell as the full circle started to gradually come to an end. He had heard that the Jonin senseis were just getting there. The Hokage would probably be en route as well, but he would arrive last to confuse Orochimaru. Even though it wasn't the original copy, the clone scowled at the possibility that it could still get a migraine. It paused as it entered the room, absorbing the scene. Yurio yelled, "Damn it, Train! Leave them alone." From the wall close to the door on the left, Train used his dujutsu once more while standing on a chair and appearing to strike a monster pose. He turned to see Fu and Kin crouched together in the corner, shivering in the boy's stare. Train was startled and lost his balance on the chair when Ibiki yelled, "What the hell is going on here?" He stumbled for a few seconds before the chair gave way to dizziness and he fell back to the ground. He whimpered and opened one eye to see an upside down Ibiki, saying, "Ouch." The head captain of Anbu heard someone snicker and turned to look around. He stopped the laughter and created a moment of awkwardness when he realized it was coming from the Anbu keeping watch and protecting the room. He gave them all hard glares. He turned to face the room again and saw that Kin was sitting on the floor beside Yurio, and all three AME genin were seated with their hands folded in their laps. Ibiki would have sworn he saw angel halos over their heads if he hadn't known any different. With a sickly sweet tone, Train said, "Sir, she's awake." With a little growl, the clone answered, "I can see that." It rubbed the bridge of its nose in frustration, but he had to concede that it was funny to see Train fall. However, this was no time to joke around. After blushing at what Ibiki had just said, Kin quickly nodded her head. "I'm not going around the bush. I have questions for you, and I want honest answers. If I believe you are lying, I will escort you to the T&I headquarters, and trust me, you don't want to go there." "What was the condition of Uchiha Sasuke when you attacked his team?" "He was unconscious after receiving Orochimaru's curse seal," Kin exclaimed spontaneously, drawing the AIM team's startled attention. Train exclaimed in wonder, "Orochimaru? The Orochimaru of the Sannin, Orochimaru?" Fu murmured to herself, "So that's what that powerful chakra was." Ibiki sighed for what he hoped would be the final time of the day. It was unexpected for the girl to come out and say it that way. Had it not been for his urgent need for answers, he would have written the Omegakure genin off. But if they attempted to make the information public, he would simply hold them in contempt. "How do you know Orochimaru did it? Are you working for him?" "Yes, and no, Orochimaru is the cage of Otogakure, and now that I'm in your custody, I have no plans on returning to him. As far as he's concerned, I'm dead, or will be if he sees me again. He destroyed the orphanage I was staying in and kidnapped me and a lot of the other children as well." Ibiki thought, "So that's why she's singing like a canary." He looked back at the AIM team, who were absorbing information like sponges. To ensure that what was being said did not leave that room, he would have to ask them again. Ibiki's headache gradually subsided as he asked, "Is there anything else?" The girl was much more cooperative than he had anticipated. It greatly simplified things. "Yes," Kin said, lowering his gaze. During the Chunin exam finals, she started to elaborate on the impending invasion of Konohagakure, which was scheduled to occur in a month. Since she was not crucial to the plan itself, she only shared with them what she personally knew. In fact, Orochimaru didn't believe she was deserving of receiving a weaker form of his cursed seal. The Anbu at the door called, "Sir, the team from Omegakure's Jonin Sensei is here. Send him in." The AIM team's eyes brightened as the door opened. A man entered the room wearing a long red trench coat that had 2 rows of buttons on it from top to bottom. He was platinum blonde, like Ino, but had hair that defied gravity, just like Kakashi's. He was eating a meat bun while wearing fire orange shades over his eyes. The cool look was immediately thrown off, and the AIM team's face fell. "Damn it, Vosh. Sensei. Don't you ever stop engorging yourself," Fu exclaimed, marking her forehead with a pulse. The man grinned as he took a last breath of the food. "Nay, Fu? It's too loud, I can't see you," she exclaimed. "That makes no sense." Once more. Ibiki interrupted loudly, "Excuse me." With the same smile, Vosh turned to face the Anbu leader. "Oh, I'm sorry. Hello, my name is Vosh Strife, I'm this team's." Ibiki moved aside to inform the genin that they were almost free to leave, saying, "I know who you are. Your aim's infamous, Vosh the Stampede. Your reputation is almost as high as our own copycat ninja." Vosh was beaming with pride. "However, I need to make this clear here and now. What was discussed in this room is highly confidential, and business of Konoha. If a single word is uttered once you set foot outside of this room, you will be considered a national threat, and the full charges will fall on the Jonin sensei." Although Vosh's pupils could see that he was perspiring profusely, his smile remained fixed. As they moaned at the man, Train said, "Sensei, we won't talk. We understand that this is Konoha's business. Actually, if we could speak with your cage, we would like to get permission to ask for aid from our own cage." They were serious once more. Ibiki nearly grinned. Many of the Konoha genin lacked the loyalty and composure that the AIM team was displaying. Apart from their antics, the team was almost friendly and fully cooperative. Since it would also demonstrate how the relationship between the Leaf and Rain villages was progressing, he would grant their request. "I'll see what I can do. In the meantime, follow the Anbu and prepare for the next part of the exam. You are to act as if nothing has changed." "Yes, sir," exclaimed all four. Ibiki arched an eyebrow at Vosh and at last started to realize where the team's eccentricity came from. After an ANBU, the team marched out of the room. Kin said, "WH. What about me, sir?" Ibiki regarded the girl with a grin that would cause Anko to tremble. "You're dead, remember. And since you technically don't exist anymore, how about I get you acquainted with the Anbu force? Should we be concerned? At this point, I honestly don't know or care anymore. I need eye soap, because this is just plain disturbing." After defeating a Konoha group of genin and obtaining the scroll they required to proceed to the tower, Temari and Konkaru were now standing at the edge of the clearing. However, they were rewarded with the sight of Gaara comforting the female member of the opposing team who had sobbed after losing their chance to advance in the exam, rather than the blood-soaked clearing they had anticipated. When their younger brother was done and sent off with the team, he turned to his siblings with the same expressionless look they had grown accustomed to. Sincerely suppressing a grin that threatened to pierce his emotionless exterior, he questioned, "What?" He knew full well that his older siblings were confused by his newfound attitude. Without knowing if Gaara had really changed, Temari went as close to being demanding as she could. "Seriously. Gaara, what's going on here?" With a sigh, Gaara set up a chair made of sand behind him. He sat, gesturing to his siblings to follow suit. Both of them raised inquisitive eyebrows until they also noticed two sand chairs behind them. In a whisper, Konkaru expressed admiration. "I didn't know he could do that." The least of their concerns at the moment was Gaara's ability to mold sand, so Temari suppressed the urge to strike him. As Temari struggled to gather her thoughts, Gaara sat calmly. A few minutes later, Temari leaned back in the surprisingly sturdy chair and crossed her arms. "What's happened to make you act like this, Gaara?" was one of her increasingly direct questions. "I met with the Konoha shinobi Naruto. He is a Junchuriki as well." Temari and Konkaru called simultaneously. "A what?" Gaara gave a shrug. "He is the container of the Kyuubi. Apparently they have a mutual relationship. Naruto has gone through the same things as I, yet he hasn't given in to his inner demon. His courage and drive has shown me that I don't have to be a weapon for Suna. I can be my own person." Temari's eyes met Gaara's and remained there for a few seconds. A little uneasy about Temari's bravery in staring their brother in the eyes like that, Konkaru glanced between the two. Then Temari got to her feet slowly. She moved 3 paces in Gaara's direction while maintaining eye contact. Sweating, Konkaru touched his puppet for protection. Suddenly, Gaara's fist inadvertently clenched. For a moment, a glimpse of his early years came to him. "Thank Kami," Temari exclaimed, embracing her younger brother. The sand surrounding them exploded into the air as Gaara's eyes grew wide. In less than a second, Konkaru leapt to his feet and unwrapped the puppet. But in the air, the sand froze. The clearing was silent, but Konkaru's heart was pounding fiercely inside his chest. Sand partially blocked his view of Temari and Gaara. He became aware that he was holding his breath as the wind blew. The sand then started to crumble back down to the earth. With a slightly more feminine tone in her voice, the Ichibi stated, "She means you no harm." Gaara remained stunned by the scene. Then his mind replayed what Naruto had said. "I bet your brother and sister worry for you all the time, even if you can't tell. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but if you don't try it will never happen." Gaara put his arms around Temari and said, "Temari. Kankuro. I'm sorry. For everything." Kankuro sighed in relief and relaxed his hold. Temari was crying and holding on to her younger brother tighter. "It's alright, Gaara. It was always alright. You never asked for this." Gaara stepped away from Temari and said, You never blamed me." Grinning, the sandy blonde wiped her eyes. Temari's smile was unfamiliar to Gaara. "Of course not, it could have been either of us if we would have been born in your position." Certainly something he wasn't used to seeing. It was bright. Moreover, it was aimed at him. He could see his sister grinning at him. A hand touched his shoulder, and he winced. Kankuro went on, "If mother never hated you, why would we?" Gaara was now truly amazed. "But, father said mother hated me." Kankuro and Temari hesitated. He said what? Temari's smile vanished in an instant. Kankuru's knuckles cracked. "I knew he was a bastard, but to tell Gaara that." Temari called and said, "We need to go see father." With beseeching eyes, Gaara said, "No, we can't, not yet. I've already alerted Konoha of the invasion. Naruto plans to let everything seem like they're normal so that father and Orochimaru won't get suspicious. We have to continue on as if nothing has changed." For the older Sand siblings, the whole thing was nearly too much to handle. Everything for which they had planned had been thrown out the window. A greater puzzle, however, was witnessing Gaara behave normally, which was warmly received. They didn't, but they thought they understood the situation well enough to follow the current. All they needed to do was remain quiet if that was all they needed to do. Now, the invasion itself and their sensei Baki were the only issues. They would have to make plans even though it was only a month away. Unaware that Gaara and Kankuro had been staring at her bewildered, Temari uttered, "We can still act normal but we do need to meet this Naruto person." Began Kankuro. Still thinking, Temari gave him a quick glance. "What? You do realize you zoned out and started talking to yourself, right? Saying stuff like everything going out the window." Gaara acting normal, going with the flow. "We thought you had started narrating or something. You writing a book?" Gaara smirked, and Temari flushed. After glancing between her brothers, she became enraged and got up. "Oh screw you guys. I'm trying to figure out what we're going to do." "What? Like you narrated. All we have to do is act natural." Gaara laughed. As Temari attempted to strike Gaara's head with her fist, sand flew up. She yelled, "Damn it, I liked you better when you didn't talk," as she kept punching the sand shield. Gaara gave Kankuro a look. Has she always been this violent?" When the punches abruptly stopped, I said, "Trust me, this isn't as bad as that time of month." Kakuro just made a statement that would be his last for the day, but he realized it a second too late. Temari yelled, "You can go to hell," and violently dragged the enormous fan around, grabbing Tsunade. The body of Kankuro flew out of the clearing and over the trees. Gaara gazed in wonder at his brother's distance and air. He covered his face and the rest of his body with a shield of sand when Temari's angry glare fell upon him. Gaara said, "Should we check on him?" Temari gave a shrug. "He'll be awake by tomorrow." As Temari rubbed the back of her head, regretting striking Kankuro so forcefully, Gaara released the sand shield. Gaara's turn to shrug was now. Well, at least his smell's gone. He thought of Gaara after he and Temari decided it would be best to wait until Kankuro woke up again. He entered the spacious prison, but this time there was just one sizable cell. For an instant, he could only see the shadow of the Ichibi. With his arms crossed and a bored expression on his face, Gaara said in his typical monotone, "Okay, what's going on here? You're starting to sound different." As it approached the gates, the Ichibi's shadow gradually grew larger. Gaara tilted his head, bewildered, when it was at last close. The tailed beast said, "What, Nibi's got your tongue or something?" in a voice that sounded almost natural. It was slightly more profound than Kurenai's. Gaara remarked, "You're slimmer. And not as ugly." Shukaku actually appeared to be less of a badger, raccoon, or other animal and more of a ferret. Her snout was slightly elongated rather than appearing to be mushed to her face, and her body was starting to resemble Kyuubi's slimness. "I'll take that as a compliment. I'm returning to my natural form, before I became a depressed prisoner." Gaara knew that depression was a terrible thing, but that was absurd. So, you weren't always a disgusting, fat, ugly rodent? The demon narrowed her eyes and said, "Don't push your luck, Gaara. I can still give you nightmares." Gaara temporarily humbled himself. The big demon lay down, moving silently in her new, slimming form. With genuine interest in anything that made the Ichibi's life miserable, Gaara questioned, "If this is the real you, then why did the Kyuubi and Hachibi bully you all the time? He has more ammunition to use against her. I'm the one tail, the weakest of the tailed beast. I was always trying to pick fights with the others so that they wouldn't call me the weakest. Of course, that backfired. That and Kyuubi and Hachibi were assholes to begin with." The demoness let out a wry chuckle. Gaara appeared to ponder for a while. "Is that why you forced me to kill all those people?" "Yes. You humans were weak. Weaker than me. So by having you, my host, slaughter them, I could gain a false sense of power. It began with only people who deserved it, but my insanity slowly grew from there." Gaara used rhetoric to say, "Power made you what you are, but the Kyuubi and Hachibi fueled it." "Well, that and they always held the fact that I had a crush on the Gobi over my head." Gaara felt like giving him a forehead slap. "Let me get this straight. You all-powerful demons, masters of elements and chakra, with knowledge beyond even the wisest of men to date, are no more than a bunch of hormone-driven animals. What are you, teenagers?" Gaara's face planted as she said, "Actually, in the proportion of demon life spans to human years, yes." Gaara muttered, "This shouldn't even surprise me anymore. So, is there a reason you're telling me all of this?" The Ichibi appeared to grin slightly. "Well, as the Kyuubi said, we cannot escape our fates. We should make our time together as least displeasing as possible. I understand if you do not trust me now, and even if it takes a while. But I am willing to help you as the Kyuubi does his child for as long as it takes." Gaara glared closely at the tailed beast. However, it quickly loosened, and he took a seat in front of the cell. He hated it, of course, after all the demon had done to him. But not any more than his father and the residents of his village. For now, the demon appeared to be sincerely attempting to make amends. Even though it seemed impossible, Gaara was prepared to look to the future. However, only due to Naruto. "You've made my life hell since the day I was born, had me kill dozens upon dozens of people. You are the reason my entire village hates me, including my own father, and the reason my brother and sister feared me until today." Gaara observed as Shukaku fumbled under his stare. "I guess if you call me Gaara-sama and never talk about killing anyone again, then I can work with you." "Gaara-sama? Really?" Ichibi got to his feet, seemingly to leave. "I can always ask Naruto to bring the Kyuubi in here too." Gaara smirked and said, "Oh Gaara-sama, stop joking around so much." He laughed the same laugh as he turned to leave the prison. "Ah, this is the start of a beautiful friendship." The two walked leisurely through the forest. Few words had been exchanged since they began to move, and the tension in the air made it impossible to try to move at full speed. Anko had already been informed of the situation by Naruto, and they were headed to the tower following a number of excruciating wounds and nearly fatal slashes from a poison-tipped kunai. It goes without saying that Anko was furious. She wasn't angry with Naruto, though. If the boy hadn't deceived Orochimaru, they would be in far more trouble than this. The reactivation of her curse mark undoubtedly upset her, but she was already considering how she could use it to her advantage. She could still recall how the curse mark increased the user's power at the expense of gradually imposing Orchi-Tami's will on them. Given the snake bastard, it most likely operated twice as quickly as the original seal. She would be able to gain strength far more quickly than she could without it if she could figure out how to use the curse mark to her advantage and make herself will Orochimaru's evil away. Once more interrupting her thoughts, Naruto called, "Hey Anko. Sensei." He had been attempting to speak with her for some time. Despite hearing him, she remained silent and kept her gaze fixed on him. No answer to the question, "Are you still upset with me?" Naruto cast a sorrowful glance down. For some time now, she had been ignoring him, and it was beginning to wear on him. His respect for her stemmed from the fact that he had listened to her when she said she wanted to apologize to him. She was aware of his inner Kyuubi and did not condemn him for it. It had not taken long for Anko Midarashi to become one of his valued individuals. He therefore wished to avoid losing her, particularly at such a young age. "Anko. Sensei." He now had a tear running down his cheek. "Even if you hate me now, I'm sorry. I never wanted things to turn out like this. I'll fix this, I promise. Just please, forgive me for putting you through this." Anko was standing on a tree branch in front of Naruto, hands on her hips, a small, melancholy smile on her face, when Naruto was interrupted. He slammed straight into her chest without pausing. Instantly, hands encircled him, immobilizing him. Naruto would have realized he was in a position that practically every man in Fire Country would literally go to war for if Anko hadn't started talking. Naruto froze in her grasp as she said, "It's not Anko, sensei. It's Anko. Chan to you, brat. Naruto, it's because of you that we're even on our way back alive. This is nothing compared to what could have happened today. I should be apologizing to you, again. I doubted you, after everything you've been through. I yelled at you in the Hokage's office when you felt pain as bad or even worse than me. Honestly, Naruto, I admire you. You were right about something. I should have felt exactly how you said when you were tricking Orochi. Teme. And I did at a point. I wanted to burn Konoha to the ground for how they treated me. But at the same time, while I was wallowing in my own self-pity, I didn't see how they were treating you too." She meant it. Anko didn't have to conceal who she really was from Naruto. Letting the real her show through the filthy muck of her promiscuous persona felt good. She buried her face in the blonde's hair and squeezed him even harder. Slowly, Naruto encircled the elderly woman's waist with his arms. "I'll fix this, Anko. Chan. Just trust me." Anko gave a small laugh. She stopped and thought about Orochimaru. "You're one of 5 people in this village that I trust and respect. Once you have that, it's hard," she said. "It's hard to lose it." Her grave face abruptly brightened. Leaning back from the embrace, she added, "Plus, you're easy on the eyes and the hands." "Hands?" asked Naruto. Anko gestured downward. Naruto froze in place, but before he could say anything, Anko went on, "Hey, when did my pants come unzipped?" She appeared to have switched into lecture mode when she said, "I'll let you in on a secret, Gaki. Shinobi of any ages are allowed to court, as long as it doesn't compromise the village's security and hinder work ethics. By technical means, as soon as you put on that Hide.8, you are a grown man. Of course, some people will still look at you as only children, which means that you will have to show them that you deserve the respect of any adult. You just proved to me that you are, by no means, still a child. I'll treat you like the adult you are." Raising an eyebrow, Naruto absorbed all the details. He was pleased with himself for winning Enko Midarashi's respect, but he also examined the opening of her brief talk. "Are you hitting on me? Why, is it working?" Naruto's mouth sealed shut as he turned a deep red. Then he took off and kept going in the direction of the tower. Furious, Enko flew after him. "Hey, seriously, is it working?" Though it wasn't as uncomfortable or tense as many had anticipated, a silence had descended upon the room. Everyone had waited patiently for their Jonin senseis to arrive among their respective teams after Ino's brief chat with Sakura. Before the sound crew attacked her, Sakura had already communicated with Ibiki, telling him everything that had transpired. Even though she was back in the room with the others, she continued to sit by herself and consider the exact words she would use to address Naruto and Sasuke upon their arrival. She was rehearsing scenes in which she would bow down to Naruto and beg for his pardon. The scenarios gradually became less violent, but the old her still ended a number of them with a fist to the dome. Sakura's eyes were watering, and her lips were inches from the blonde's in the final of her inward scenarios. She looked up and saw that she had briefly dozed off. "You say who did the what and the where?" she asked. She blushed and covered her face after a few looks in her direction. That didn't occur. It was merely a dream." Surprisingly, Shikamaru was awake in the corner with Team 10. Instead, Ino had developed a few ideas away from the subject of what had happened for the majority of the time between when he had gone to speak with Sakura and when she had returned to sit with them. Shoji ate his endless bag of chips without comment, seemingly unaware of anything else. Shikamaru began, "Ino." When her name was called, the platinum blonde looked up, startled. Like everyone else who sat quietly around the room, she appeared to have been lost in thought. "What is it, Maru-kun?" she inquired, nearly laughing at her surrogate brother's sudden flush. She had only ever called him that when she was really happy about something or just wanted to play pranks on him. From then on, she would use it much more frequently. "You're starting to act different. Like Hinata. Like Naruto. Hell, like damn near everyone now. What's your reason?" He responded with sincerity. He made it his mission to spot his sister's potentially foolish, risky, and, hopefully in this instance, good behavior for her as a whole. Ino reddened a little. Shikamaru seemed to read her thoughts, but he was likely just able to piece it together because he knew the genius. She continued to consider everything she wanted to do for the others and herself even after speaking with Sakura. Ironically, despite her unusual behavior, she had started to consider re-establishing her friendship with Naruto. She wouldn't mind trying to speak with the boy to reassure him and find out what had happened after what she had just witnessed. She wanted to change even more as a result of this way of thinking. Even though she didn't know the specifics of what had happened in the Forest of Death, she still wanted to get stronger so that it wouldn't happen again. Ino was still perplexed. She was aware that she wanted to change, but she was still unsure of the course she should follow. Was she meant to become stronger for other people? Was she meant to transform into the compassionate young lady she knew she could be? She called out, but without regret or sorrow for herself, "I'm weak, Maru-kun. Weaker than I should be. Because of blindly following Sasuke and for acting like a pighead." She had already discussed this with herself on multiple occasions, and no matter how many questions she asked herself, she would never be able to find the answers. Although she couldn't deny that she still harbored a slight crush on Sasuke, Ino knew she would no longer chase him. The blonde was certain that she would no longer enter situations without thinking. When she was in the academy, she disregarded everything her father had taught her as a child. She should have realized there was a reason for it sooner rather than later. He put an arm around her shoulder and said, "The fact that you can admit that means that you're not weak, Ino. Everything that you've just said even. It makes me think that you've hidden the real you from us this whole time. And if that's the case, I should hit you for making me and Choji deal with that fake you for all these years." Shikamaru leaned onto Ino, who laughed at her. "But how will I know if I've changed or not? I don't even know how." Choji said softly, "It's like Shikamaru just said, shocking the other two. You've already changed, Ino. Even if you don't know what type of path you're supposed to be on yet, find one. If you can't go forward, go left. If not left, then right. If all the paths around you lead to nowhere, then blow a fucking hole in the wall and make a different path." The portly teenager yelled with rage in his eyes. Shikamaru and Ino were sweating profusely at the fervent speech. Shikamaru chuckled and said, Yeah, what Choji said. Ino, live your life. Me and Choji here will always support you. Okay? Don't be afraid to talk to us, even if I try to blow you off for a nap." "Yeah, what's with that?" Ino plumply called. "And why are you being so Shikamaru-ish right now?" Hell, it was well deserved, but Shikamaru chose to ignore the fact that Ino had assigned him his own category of lazy. "You're my big, little sister. What type of brother would I be if I didn't listen every now and then?" Choji called and indulged in the flavor of barbecue chips once more, saying, "You'd be the Shikamaru-type brother." Shikamaru gave his brother a fierce look. "Thanks a lot." The two smiled at Ino's giggles. "Thanks, both of you. I still don't know what I'm supposed to do, but I know I can never go back to how I was." Ino cherished them. Even though it wasn't often, Shikamaru and Choji had supported her before. As she recalled, Naruto had also supported her at that time. She needed to make amends with others. Ino made the decision that this would be the first step on her own journey. When Team 8 heard their sensei's voice, they looked up and said, "Looks like we've missed a lot." Following Asuma Sarutobi, Kurenai and Guy entered the room. Instead of jumping up or at least acknowledging them more than they did, the genin did not react as their sensei had hoped. Rather, they all glanced over, remained motionless, and resumed their conversation. Guy was even taken aback by Lee's failure to greet him. As he observed Neji murmuring to his teammates and their solemn nods of agreement, he said, "It seems they are more troubled than we could have imagined." Kurenai looked at her own team and scowled while folding her arms. Shino was beside them, and Hinata was sitting with her head resting on Kiba's shoulder. They appeared to be conversing as well, and Hinata appeared to be beginning to relax once more. She continued to question what had transpired to cause the girl to change in a single night. The two men immediately feared what Kurenai had just said. Who could blame them? From what the Anbu reported, we may just as well have an S-class secret revealed here in front of everyone. Who knew what the kids would say about them for keeping the Kyuubi's secret a secret, and worse, what they would say to Naruto, if they found out. The Jonin heard a newcomer say, "Excuse us, but we would like to enter." They turned to see the Omegakure team, their sensei grinning silly and the genin looking irritated. Train clenched his jaw. "Please, kill this man. If he speaks one more word about food, I'm going to shoot him myself." Even Fu, who shared Naruto's love of ramen, had grown tired of the man's digressions while eating meat buns and donuts. "We'll explain to our cage that his death was his own fault." "Not you too, Fu," Vosh exclaimed, embracing the young girl's leg while tears ran down his cheeks. All of the Konoha were sweating. "And who are you?" asked Kurenai. Vosh was awake as though nothing had occurred. "Vosh Strife of Omegakure. It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance." Yurio kicked Vosh in the back, sending him rolling into the room as he was about to extend his hand for a handshake. Kurenai glanced down and saw Yuriko on one knee in front of her, but the Konoha Jonin had already stepped aside. "Forgive my idiot sensei. It seems he still doesn't know how to treat a beautiful woman such as yourself. I am Yuriko Ishida, here to serve you in any way, milady." Kurenai blushed less from embarrassment than from a slight sense of unease. Fu pushed her stinger into Yuriko's side once more, sparing her from more humiliation. "Damn it, Yuriko, how many women are going to take a restraining order out against you before you stop doing this?" Kiba raised an eyebrow in the room. "Who the hell is that flirting with Kurenai, sensei?" "They are from the Omegakure team that arrived here with us, remember?" said Shino. Hinata couldn't contain her cute little laugh. When Ten said, "Fu," the room shook. As a flying Ten glomped her to the ground. Fu looked up in time to squeak. Ten rubbed her cheeks against Fu's and sobbed. "Fu, I was so worried about you." Tears were streaming from her eyes. The older girl's head was patted by Fu. I'm fine, but you're crushing me." The two paused as a shadow passed over them and then noticed Train leaning over them, his eyes glowing that otherworldly yellowish gold, and a cat-like smirk adorning his face. Vosh was now standing, and Fu and Ten yelled and ran into the room, hiding behind him. Flailing a finger at the genin, Ten called out, "WH. What's with those creepy eyes?" "I don't know," exclaimed Fu. Everyone in the room was sweating because Train's eyes were normal and appeared to be unaffected by anything that had happened. Innocently, he said, "Hey, are you two alright? You look as if you've seen a ghost." "Devil," they retorted. Two of the nin in the room had virtually forgotten about the others, but the majority of them watched the scene with contentment. The room immediately became tense as the two nins' eyes met. Then Hinata muttered, "Neji." He returned the whisper, "Hinata." They could read each other's lips even if they couldn't hear one another across the room. Neji was taken aback when Hinata gave him a vile glare. Then she got up, attracting her two teammates' attention. Kiba asks, "You okay, Hinata?" Shino did not see the battle between the two Hyuga. Instead, he sensed it. After folding her arms, Hinata approached Neji and paused a few feet ahead of him. Her expression had changed to one of indifference. Hers and Neji's were identical, although there was a faint undertone of animosity. "And who do I owe to have the Hyuga heiress herself gracing a branch member like me with her presence?" He was angry. "If you would open your blinded eyes, you would see that I have never claimed the main branch." The tone in Hinata's voice surprised Neji. "Oh? Has the pathetic excuse for a Hyuga finally grown a backbone?" "No, that's impossible. Someone as pathetic to the main and side branch as you could never hope to change. You can only fall further." Hinata's eyes briefly flickered with the Byakugan as she made the statement. "Your words will no longer affect me, Neji. If you wish to continue to belittle me, then prove you are stronger. Otherwise, keep your own pathetic bullshit to yourself and have the decency to hold your head high in the presence of both the side and main branch." "Fool!" shouted Neji. "Why waste my time with you, one who can't even hold her own against her younger sister? You wouldn't even last 10 seconds against me." Drawing a kunai, Hinata hurled it at Neji. After drawing his own and deflecting it, Neji stepped forward and leapt over Hinata. While he was above her, he aimed a slash directly at her throat, but instead struck another kunai. As Hinata blocked his aerial attack and turned her body into a windmill kick, she spun instantly. In order to avoid the reverse axe kick that would have caused his skull to collapse, Neji quickly retreated, but he was unable to do so in time to avoid Hinata's other leg, which she extended towards his chest, sending him sliding back a number of feet. Kurenai shouted, "Hinata, Neji, stop this instance." Guy shook his head and placed a hand on the woman's shoulder. He said solemnly, "Leave them be." But Guy gripped a little more tightly. Kurenai's gaze shifted between Guy and the scene. Knowing she probably couldn't stop them anyhow, she gave herself a hug. This needed to be settled sooner or later, Kurenai. Maybe now would be best. A spark turned into a full-fledged fire as a result of the tension that developed between the two. Nothing, not even the Jonin, could stop what was happening now. Neji was the first to slide into the Hyuga's stance and activate his Byakugan. Neji's hateful sentiments were dwarfed by Hinata's ominous glare. She refused to let him bring her down. Not when she had begun to try to strengthen herself. No matter how she wished to do it differently, they would resolve this unwarranted conflict right here and now. She has never achieved anything by taking the quiet route. She would now let her abilities speak. She called out, "Byakugan," and hurried inside. Many others, including every genin and even Asuma, who had never witnessed a Hyuga on Hyuga combat when slack-jawed due to the barrage of strikes and blocks. They appeared to be able to see each other's final movements because the blows were so accurate. Neji shuddered at Hinata's determined expression. Neji wrote, "She's better than I thought." Hinata saw that Neji was adjusting his chakra so that it would still strike her tenketsu even when it curled around her strikes with a finger twitch. She was certain that neither her father nor any Hyuga period had taught her about that. She was aware that Neji, not her, was a prodigy for this reason. However, Hinata was also not your average Hyuga. She could defeat Neji in the game of creativity even if she couldn't defeat him in the traditional Hyuga Jyuken. The Hyuga heiress blocked Neji's subtle attempt to remove one of Hinata's tenketsu, but she also flicked her wrist just enough to cause Neji's tiny burst of chakra to miss her arm entirely. No one would notice, but Neji's eyes widened. Observers saw no change in the battle as the next few strikes proceeded in the same manner. The earlier glare returned as Neji leapt away from Hinata. Hinata merely gave her older cousin a sly smile. "What's wrong, Neji? I thought I would be down in a matter of seconds, don't tell me you're starting to have second thoughts." Neji sighed. "A minor miscalculation on my part. Your fall is still inevitable. It will simply take a little more effort on my part." Neji's grin broadened. Hinata's heart skipped a beat when she said, "You are in my field of divination." Both Kurenai and Guy were about to dash in, looking horrified, until they noticed Hinata grinning as well. Neji appeared to be fully committed to taking Hinata's life as he charged forward, lines of chakra trailing behind his hands. When Neji said, 2 palms, 4 palms, 8 palms, 16 palms, she was counting. However, silenced awe engulfed the entire room. Hinata had begun to rotate her arms as Neji began his blows. It was only Train, Fu, and Neji who could see what was truly going on. Hinata's flat palms dropped to meet each blow Neji threw. With every rotation, a long, thin chakra blade descended, causing Neji's own chakra to split them apart, but at the expense of using up the chakra he was attempting to use to strike Hinata. Hinata took a shaky step back as Neji reached the 8th palm because, had she been immobile during her defense, Neji's momentum would have allowed him to push through her blades and into her body. As Neji persisted in his attack, Hinata was literally running backwards by the 32nd palm. The blur of Hinata's and Neji's hands and arms was now visible only to Train. Neji exclaimed, "Gentle Fist 8 trigrams, 64 palms jutsu," as Hinata's blades returned to his final blows, causing a visible chakra explosion to form between them that resembled glass breaking and forcing Hinata against the area's wall. She slid down to one knee and grunted weakly as she struck the wall. Neji's eyes were filled with fear, and he was panting as heavily as the girl. "What is this?" Hinata's eyes blurred and she let out dry heaves as she panted. I'm not afraid," she summoned in a low voice. Her Byakugan had stopped working, and she stumbled to her feet. The blood dripping from her palms could be seen if one looked closely. After noticing, Neji discovered that his own fingers were also bleeding. With fear now visible on his face, Neji called, How have you gotten like this? What's the difference today that wasn't there 2 days ago? Who are you?" Hinata returned to the Jyuken position. She turned her Byakugan back on and said, "I am who I am supposed to be." She strained herself as she inhaled deeply, saying, "I am a believer of change. I am a person who stands on the verge of collapsing. I am a person who believes in justice and honor, of love and loss. I am a person who believes that the weak can become stronger than the best, that there is no difference between failure and success." With chakra forming all over her arms, Hinata bounded forward. They formed into lions around her fist. "I am Hinata Hyuga," Neji exclaimed unexpectedly. It was a hasty move. As Hinata ran past Neji, the lions surrounding her fist roared, "Gentle Fist! Twin Lion Barrage!" Her flash momentarily blinded many people in the room. With both of her hands extended from the assault, Hinata stood a few feet behind Neji. There was silence. Neji muttered, "Lady." Hinata. As his jacket burst into pieces and cuts appeared all over his torso, his tenketsu nearly sliced to pieces. He was nearly unconscious when he hit the ground. Neji.kun. Called Hinata, who was also experiencing the symptoms of unconsciousness. Tears had started to fall, but Hinata's expression remained the same. "I'm different than father and the others of the main branch. I was hated, damn near outcast. Because I didn't treat the side branch the way the others did. Because I wasn't as gifted in our arts as my little sister. Because I actually have emotions. I hate the hatred that's in our family. I hate having to lie to myself and act this way. I never want to be like father. But I don't want to lose what little family I have left there either." "Hi, Hinata." Neji was surprisingly attempting to stand. I understand it. I understand that you hate me for what happened to your father. Uncle Hisashi was an honorable man, and more caring than I could ever imagine my own father being. He died for me, and not a day goes by that I don't thank him every night. There are times where your hatred for me makes me wish that those Kumogakure ninja would have succeeded in taking me if it would mean you and your father's happiness. She made an effort to wipe away her tears, but they persisted. She turned to face Neji, who was now standing, and sniffed. Through all of this, the only reason I haven't caved, Neji, is because of Naruto-kun. No matter how much pain I've gone through, I know it's nowhere near as much as him. And no matter what, he kept going. He didn't let anyone stand in his way. Even if I'm only finally realizing it. I don't want to let anyone stand in my way either. I won't change who I am for father. I will continue to be who I am, and I will get stronger on my own, with the help of friends. If you wish to kill me still, then I. Hinata once more took a defensive posture. Then I will fight you until my last breath. Regardless of how much pain his body was experiencing, Neji called, as if he had caught his breath. That won't be necessary. Neji gave Hinata a warm smile and said, I see you, Hinata. Sama. Hinata gasped. Neji-kun. It appeared that nobody understood what was happening. Kurenai and Ten were the only ones who could figure out what it meant. Fu said to her friend with the bun hair, are we missing something? Ten's own nervousness from simply witnessing the battle appeared to be subsiding at this point. Yeah. Neji-kun said he could see Hinata. Chan without the Byakugan activated. Within the Hyuga clan, it's the utmost sign of love and respect. It means he can see the real her now. Hinata. Sama, I've seen how your father and others treat you, only now do I see what that truly means. My anger was wrongfully pointed at you. The kidnapping was not your fault, and at the time you could do nothing. You are hated by the main branch, and I added to that hatred with my own. I could never have seen the things you have been going through with my own callous revenge on my mind. Neji approached Hinata slowly, the younger girl staring up at her older cousin with a distressed look. Neji hugged Hinata, placing one hand behind her. Why is it now? Only after we have gone too far that I understand this. Hinata. Sama. I could have harmed you. You could have harmed me, yet you didn't. Hinata rested her forehead on Neji's bare shoulder and said, Neji-kun. You didn't use the Kaden. I knew you had the power to change too. I could never hate you. When Neji finally passed out, he sagged forward onto Hinata and said, I am glad, Hinata. Sama. The teenager was unsteadily caught by Hinata. In an instant, Guy was by their side, saying, I'll take him. After giving Neji to Guy, Hinata wiped the tears from her eyes. She nearly fell out herself after taking one shaky step. Fortunately, Ten, Fu, Ino, and Kurenai were there to capture her. The girls heard Hinata whisper, Thank you. She had defended herself against Neji's 8 trigrams with all her might. She then went one step further and employed another of her own techniques, which further depleted her chakra reserves. Ten said, No Hinata. Thank you. Ten sensed it. She sensed Neji's transformation. Neji had never smiled at her before. He had given Hinata a sincere smile instead of his typical cocky grins. When she realized how eager she was to be the one to receive such a smile, she flushed. This is going to change everything. Ibiki held his head in exasperation, saying, This makes absolutely no sense. Ibiki met Anko's eyes as she said, Well, if you can't trust me, maybe you're really in the right profession. Her tone was almost uncanny calm. That tone was familiar to him. She felt both hurt and irritated at the same time. I'm not saying that I don't trust you, Anko. It's just that your story has holes in it. Just because you and the kid went to have a talk doesn't make you coming back with signs of a struggle any more understandable. That was a gross understatement. With tattered and ripped clothing and bits of grass and bushes in their hair, the two appeared to have been through a hurricane. Pulling the blonde close to her, Anko called, We got a bit rough, but it was nothing my little Naruto-kun couldn't handle. For his part, Naruto could only blush and hope that Ibiki would be fooled by their half-truths. When they arrived at the tower, Anbu accompanied them to the real Ibiki, who asked Naruto too many questions. Fortunately, Anko knew how to handle Ibiki and managed to conceal the majority of what actually transpired. They omitted the part about the Kyuubi and Anko's seal being reactivated, but Naruto himself informed Ibiki that Orochimaru was in the forest, which was already well known. Apart from that, they informed Ibiki that Naruto had to fight halfway back to the tower because Anko had become a little agitated and feisty. The two were set free after a few stomach turning minutes under Ibiki's scathing gaze. Naruto sighed as he moved toward the main room, where everyone else was. Unbelievable. And here I thought the fox was the trickiest thing alive. Whatever. Be grateful that worked, because if Ibiki would have found out the truth, we'd both be locked away for a long time. Besides Orochimaru, Teme and Hokage. Dono, Ibiki. Sama is the only other person I'm afraid of. When they reached an intersecting hall and two individuals rounded a corner, Naruto stopped his retort. Anko paused as well, casting a curious glance between the two and Naruto. Suddenly, Naruto's mask went up and his face went to neutral. While Sasuke stood beside him, unable to look at Naruto, Kakashi's eyes grinned at the two, saying, "Naruto, Anko-san, glad to see you two are okay." All Naruto could do was keep glaring at them. Taking note of this, Anko placed herself protectively a little in front of Naruto. Kakashi's eye widened as Anko asked, "What's up with him? Did you already take care of his curse mark?" As Anko's eyes narrowed and sunk into his one visible eye, Kakashi instantly regretted saying, is it wise to speak of that in front of him?" It was a straightforward question, Hitaki. All you had to do was respond. Whether or not Kakashi was her commanding officer, he knew not to irritate Anko, which he was doing a dreadful job of doing. By him, I believe you mean Naruto, and he already knows all about the curse mark and its effects, so I don't believe that would be a problem. Kakashi noticed Naruto himself glaring at Anko as he looked past him. For a brief moment, it made Kakashi feel bad and brought to mind everything Sasuke had said in the secret room. With a sigh, he described how to apply the overseal and what they hoped it would accomplish for a while. Anko kept Naruto at her heels the entire time, but she could sense his movements and could only assume that he was making every effort to avoid attacking Kakashi and Sasuke. When Kakashi finished speaking to Anko, Sasuke said, "Naruto, if it means anything at all, I'm sorry." Naruto spat back angrily, "Yeah, sorry you got put in your place when I wouldn't boost your shitty ego." Though he knew the outburst was well worth it, Sasuke nearly recoiled. "I don't know if you remember what we said on the bridge in Wave Country, Naruto." Naruto's expression softened slightly as his eyes snapped open. "Back then I said I didn't know why I jumped in the way of those needles to protect you. But that was a lie. I still remembered when me and you were best friends, before what happened to my family. And even though we drifted apart, you told me that we were still friends in the forest. The night before Zabuza attacked us, we promised we would stay alive and protect each other. We promised that we would never lose to anyone else so that we could be the ones to beat each other, though I still don't see how that's going to work." Naruto uttered the words he had said that evening in a whisper, "I beat you and you beat me." Sasuke grinned a little because it appeared that he was connecting with the blonde. "I still don't see how that sounds homo either." "Really? Think about it for a second." Naruto grinned piteously and laughed a little. He was forced to acknowledge that he had forgotten all of the promises he and Sasuke had made to one another at the time. Their friendship eventually deteriorated to the point where it was no longer there. Naruto was now reminded that they were meant to be friends by Sasuke's reminder of their past. Naturally, Naruto wasn't going to forgive Sasuke right away, especially after he had attacked Kin and Fu in the forest, but he also wasn't going to be angry with him indefinitely. Naruto stated, "Look, I'll forgive and forget on one condition." "What?" "Stop it with the goddamn ego. I get that you like being stronger than most genin, but when you need to rub it in everyone's face, it just pisses people off. Besides, I'm still as strong as you, or maybe stronger now." Sasuke arched an eyebrow at that, but he was unable to deny it after recalling what had transpired in the Forest of Death. As they continued down the hall, Anko called, "Yo, if you two are done making up, I'd like to go take a bath and a nap, so let's get moving please." Wow. The legendary Anko Mitarashi just said please. That's a first. Naruto pretended to be shocked as he taunted the same Anko Mitarashi he was referring to, while Sasuke and Kakashi stood staring. Anko merely grinned. Jaws dropped as Anko left with a seductive switch in her step, Naruto included. "You know, Naruto-kun, I was going to let you take a bath with me. I guess since I can't say please, I won't be asking you to join me either." Sasuke deadpanned, "Dude, you just fucked up." Naruto exclaimed, "Like hell I did," before sprinting to catch up to the special Jonin. All eyes were on them when they arrived in the room. He sensed some tension, and his interest was piqued when he noticed an exhausted-looking Hinata and an unconscious older-looking male Hinata type person, also known as Neji. "Naruto-kun," he heard two different yells of the same name, 1 second too late. Both Fu and 10 took off and landed on top of Naruto. Anko had been wise enough to dodge the flying pair of kunoichi by taking a quick step to the left. Suddenly, the tension was released. Fu screamed into the bend of his neck, "We were so worried about you, dude. What the hell happened back there?" 10 pressed him to her chest and sobbed, "Yeah, why'd you run off on us like that?" He was beginning to grow accustomed to being in such situations. Shortly thereafter, Hinata and Ino approached slowly. Hinata said feebly, "I'm glad you're okay, Naruto-kun." She was clearly still exhausted because she refrained from strangling 10 and Fu for being on top of Naruto. From Hinata's left, Ino said, "Hey, Naruto. I want to talk to you about something later." Kiba shouted in jealousy, "Hey, why does Naruto have an entourage?" Shino asked, "How the hell did you use that word right?" Anko grinned, but her head had a noticeable tick mark. "So Naruto, since when have you been this popular with the ladies?" 10 and Fu jumped up in surprise at the tone of Anko's voice. Behind Ino and Hinata, they hid. Fu exclaimed, "She's creepier than Train." 10 nodded in agreement. When Anko gave Hinata a wink, the girl gave a little giggle. The question that had been hovering in the back of everyone's minds was first posed by Choji. "Naruto, what happened in the forest?" Naruto became aware that everyone was watching him for the first time. But he also observed when some looks turned to Sasuke and started to resemble glares and frowns. "Hey, easy guys. Sasuke wasn't entirely at fault in the forest either," Naruto clarified. Naruto could tell by the doubtful expressions on everyone's faces that they found it difficult to believe that, but not any more so than by the utterly malevolent expressions on 10's and Fu's faces. It appeared to Naruto that 10 was just a few seconds away from throwing all of her weapons at Sasuke. "This is going to be pretty hard to explain, especially since I can't really tell you guys what happened to Sasuke. Just know that there's a weird mark on him that makes him go crazy." "What mark? Where'd it come from? Why does it make him act crazy?" The questions came suddenly and without warning. This time, the genin was calmed by the Jonin's simultaneous key releases. The Jonin sensei caught everyone's attention, and Naruto exhaled with relief. One thing he didn't have to explain, at least. His intended explanation, however, would likely be even worse than attempting to explain Orochimaru and the war. Naruto won't be able to answer those questions under law. He told you literally all that he can for now. Asuma clarified. It was here that Ino's notorious rage rose. "What? Oh come on, Asuma. Sensei. How does the Hokage expect us not to wonder about what the hell we saw back there? Just because we are genin doesn't mean we can't handle a little bit of classified information." Surprisingly, the genin group supported Ino. They all appeared antsy even after they were silenced by another wave of ki. Naruto intervened before they could get unruly once more. "You're right, Ino. As genin, we are legally part of this village's military, albeit the lowest rank. So since I can't reveal to you what happened to Sasuke, I can at least tell you what happened to me." The genin was filled with anticipation, and everyone outside of Vosh seemed to be filled with dread. Before Fu made a number of gestures that only her team and sensei could possibly comprehend, Vosh arched an eyebrow. When Naruto finally noticed Sakura was not among the other genin gathered in front of and around the room's door, he started to enter. She continued to sit with her knees pulled up to her chest at the far end of the room. When she saw Naruto and Sasuke slowly following behind, her face flushed. Naruto said, "Hey, Sakura," without much feeling. Hey Naruto." She considered adding the cute.kun, but changed her mind. To avoid frightening him, it would be best to approach him gradually. "Sasuke," she continued. Sasuke was momentarily taken aback by the greeting he received from the person he believed to be his biggest fangirl stalker. Slowly, the shock gave way to mild curiosity and bewilderment. He simply replied, "HN," because he was at a loss for words to respond to her. Every other team in the room sat around the now reunited Team 7 as though they were having a storytelling session. The Jonin stood by, aware that they could not stop Naruto from disclosing his own secret if he so desired. Even though they felt increasingly helpless in this circumstance, only Kurenai considered the implications for their knowledge of their students. When Naruto started talking, she held her breath, but when Anko placed a comforting hand on her shoulder, she released it. "Don't worry about the brat. No matter what happens afterward, he'll be fine. It's the rest of the village I'm worried about," whispered Anko. Kurenai inquired, "Since when have you worried about the village?" Anko gave a snort. "I love this village," she exclaimed, pausing when she saw Kurenai's adorable bewildered expression. "It's the villagers I hate. I don't know what I'd do if that dango stand got destroyed. Kurenai palmed his face. You're unbelievable. Naruto cleared a bit of his throat. Alright, before I begin, I want to say that there's only a handful of you in this room that I actually trust. But seeing as we're all going to be working together anyway, I'd rather you know about this sooner than later. Also, whether you accept me or hate me for what I say is up to you. I won't give a fuck one way or the other, as long as you stay out of my way afterward. This made everyone's spines tingle. Naruto sounded as though he anticipated some of them would later despise him. They patiently awaited his explanation rather than speaking up. I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. 13 years ago on October 10th, the Kyuubi attacked Konoha. What we learned was that the 4th Hokage, aka Minato Namikaze, valiantly died fighting the monster, blah blah blah, and defeated it. When Naruto appeared to make fun of the person he always claimed to aspire to, some of the genin's faces contorted. That was only one more sign of how much he had really changed. Well, that's almost a load of bullshit. Even though I don't know exactly what happened that day, the 4th did not beat the Kyuubi. Even a ninja of his caliber could not defeat the strongest of the tailed beast. Let's make this fun, since I'm sure out of all of you here, you can put 2 and 2 together like Shikamaru has already. With wide eyes and an open mouth, Shikamaru caught everyone's attention. It seems that he had already deduced Naruto's meaning. His shocked expression changed to a contemplative one, which the others interpreted as him not telling them. Naruto said, "Alright, so anybody know when my birthday is?" Hinata's hand shot up, followed by Choji, Shino, and Kiba, and he wasn't shocked. He was taken aback, though, to see Ino's hand among them. Sasuke's hand was raised at chest level as he looked back, but Sakura's expression remained one of confusion. Ino? October 10th, the exact same day Yondaime Dono defeated the Kyuubi. Yep. Now, a bit of information to help you all out. Since the Yondaime couldn't defeat the Kyuubi, he needed to seal it away. Throughout the group, thoughtful expressions started to emerge. The whole team, including Lee, Ino, Choji, and Hinata, was left wondering what was happening. Ten, who was skilled at sealing, appeared to be the next to grasp what Naruto was referring to because her face resembled Shikamaru's exactly when he did. With sad eyes, she gave Naruto a warm smile, letting him know that she didn't care about his secret. Naruto felt somewhat more assured about how the others would react as a result. Alright, since it looks like most of you still don't get it, I'll just come out with it. I, Naruto Uzumaki, am the Jinchuriki of the 9-tailed demon, the Kyuubi no Kitsune. All the other genin let out a gasp. Even Anko found herself twitching and hoping for a positive outcome as the Jonin's tension peaked. With her voice shaking, Ino questioned, "The 9-tailed fox is inside of you?" Naruto gave a sorrowful nod. Kiba questioned, "But what does that mean? And why you?" This information seemed to irritate him the most. Given that the Kyuubi had massacred a significant number of Inuzuka during its invasion, it was only logical. "It means that the fox is alive and inside of me. The reason for why he chose me is because there was no weapon or item strong enough to hold back the Kyuubi. Plus, if he would have decided to seal it into a person, their chakra coils would have to be big enough to survive an inflation of chakra strong enough to completely blow away all 5 major hidden villages. Seeing as that's impossible, the only other alternative would be someone with undeveloped chakra coils, ones that are naturally forming large, but open enough to leak out chakra at a safe rate." With tears in her eyes, Ino exhaled, "A newborn baby. Surprising enough, I was the only baby born that day." Naruto didn't want to reveal to them that he was the 4th Hokage's son just yet, despite the fact that this was a lie. Sakura said, "What about your parents?" behind him. Unable to come up with a clever lie, Naruto simply shrugged. Neji had woken up just before Naruto's speech, asking, "Why did you think any of us would hate you, Naruto-san?" He had underestimated the damage caused by Hinata's attack. Naruto scowled. He joked, but no one laughed. "Well, a lot of your parents hate me. The villagers hate me. Hell, I hate me." "But why do the villagers hate Naruto if he's a hero?" Choji inquired. Asuma appeared taken aback. "What do you mean, Choji?" "Well, since the Yondaime couldn't defeat the Kyuubi, that means the village would have been destroyed eventually. But since Naruto was born, he was able to seal it away. Naruto's the reason the village was saved that day. And if not for him, then the Kyuubi would be out wreaking havoc right now." "Not really," Naruto exclaimed, perspiring. All of the Jonin were shocked by Choji's remarks, and they were even more shocked to see that some of the genin agreed with him. They had anticipated that some of them would harbor some degree of animosity or, at the very least, disbelief. However, observing them all, it didn't appear that any would emerge. Guess who said, "How troublesome." The adults all probably looked past the Choji. With the Kyuubi attack fresh in their minds, they probably saw Naruto as the Kyuubi and not as its jail. But I don't get why they still do. I've noticed the way they look at and treat Naruto, not to mention all the times he's been in the hospital for unexplainable accidents. That was good to hear from Shikamaru and Choji. Naruto. That he would still be friends with them made him happy. But he was more concerned about those who had not yet spoken. "So, what about the rest of you? Do any of you think I'm the Kyuubi?" Ino laughed. The boy's blush confirmed her theory that Naruto, who is so innocently adorable, could not be a fierce demon. "I don't think the Kyuubi's as cute as you, Naruto-kun," she said. "She hasn't watched anime, boy." Kiba gave a little growl. Naruto scowled and said, "It annoys me. I can't say that I didn't think that, Naruto." But Choji made a good point too. "Besides, you haven't attacked any of us or anything like that. You're still the same Naruto I know, not the Kyuubi. I know nothing of you to like or hate you, Naruto-san. I will rely on your actions in the future to decide what to think." Neji followed. "However, if the Kyuubi is truly sealed inside you, then there is no reason to believe that you yourself are the Kyuubi." Shino moved in Naruto's direction. Naruto claimed to be improving his ability to read Shino's body language, but he was at a loss for words when Shino stood motionless before him. The boy, who had been silent, then pointed directly into Naruto's face. He had a tiny bug on his finger. He questioned, "What is this, Naruto-san? One of your clan's Kakaichu bugs?" Naruto replied, a little uneasy about the creepy crawly's closeness. His monotone faltered slightly as he allowed a faint, barely perceptible tinge of humor to enter his voice. "Indeed. Is this me I am holding on my finger?" he asked. Naruto yelled, "Of course not, you're not a little bug, you're Shino Aburame," but he refused to acknowledge the analogy. "Yes. I am myself, and my Kakaichu are separate entities inside of me. You are yourself, and the fox is also a separate entity inside of you." Naruto chuckled and said, "Ooh, that's where you were going with that." Rock Lee called out, "I can't wait to test myself against your flames of youth, Naruto-kun," and struck the renowned good guy pose, complete with sparkling teeth. Guy tried to rush to his young pupil and give him a hug that would undoubtedly leave the teenagers permanently scarred, but Kakashi and Asuma restrained him from doing so behind the group. Sasuke placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder and questioned, "Should I be surprised about this? Because I don't think anything you tell me will surprise me anymore." Naturally, Naruto was extremely concerned about what Sasuke would say, and to be honest, he was still concerned. "You'd be surprised." No pun intended. Even though Sasuke appeared to be attempting to mend their friendship, his pride couldn't be crushed in that way. Sasuke must have been considering some form of power. Naruto hoped it would only serve as inspiration to strengthen himself rather than something darker. Sakura remained silent at first. The idea of Naruto harboring the Kyuubi was beyond her comprehension. She found it painful to recall how the villagers, her parents, and even herself used to disparage Naruto. She had mistreated Naruto in order to maintain her popularity with others, and that was the reason he was treated so poorly. Things might have turned out differently if she had discovered the truth about him sooner. That was untrue. She most likely would have treated Naruto badly for Sasuke even if she had known the truth about him at the time. Naruto would never have mattered to her as long as Sasuke was present. She genuinely hated herself after coming to this realization, but she hated everyone she believed she knew even more. When it came to Naruto, her own parents were among the worst offenders. Yes, Sakura was affected by that hatred, but she was too stupid to question it. She jumped when Naruto said, "You don't have to say anything. I can see it on your face, and thank you." Her heart skipped a beat when she saw the forgiving smile on his face, and she turned away, her blush coming back full force. She believed she wasn't deserving of his pardon so quickly. For now, she was happy that he didn't despise her, but there would be more time to talk to him. The fact that everyone was handling this better than he had expected made Naruto very happy. One individual, though, had not yet responded to him. He was about to turn to face the individual when a blur struck him, nearly knocking him over. "Sakura. You baka," Hinata's quiet voice murmured in his ear. He felt her sobbing into his shoulder as he said, "Don't you ever think that I would hate you? We just got over this problem, remember?" Hinata-chan. Naruto was incredibly naive. Even though Hinata had been changing, he could still see how weak the girl was from the meekness in her voice, the tenderness of her hug, and even the way she held her close. Hinata had changed, but she had also remained the same. She leaned close to him so that only he could hear her. I don't care about the fox being inside you. As long as you stay who you are, Naruto-kun. You are Naruto Uzumaki, she said. Namikaze. Naruto's eyes grew wide, and before he could respond, Hinata kissed him gently on the cheek. His thoughts shifted from how she knew to how soft her lips were as a result of the blood that rushed to his cheeks. Naruto was not the only one embarrassed. Hinata was also flushed. Anko's eyebrow twitched. Fu flushed jealously, and the other female genin could only watch with hopeful smiles. With a scratch at the back of his head, Naruto questioned, "Are we still waiting?" "We aren't quite there yet, Naruto-kun." Hinata glanced at the other people. Though only Naruto heard her, she timidly confessed, "But I don't want to lose you to any of them either." It was Naruto's turn to smile slyly now. He approached Ten and Fu and grabbed them by the waist, eliciting startled squeaks from them and stunned looks from everyone else. He winked and called, "Maybe you should try just a bit harder, Hinata-chan." Naruto's fake bravado was completely destroyed by the enormous amounts of ki that emanated from Anko, Kurenai, and, surprisingly, Neji. Every man shuddered when Anko's demonically sweet voice asked, "And what type of indication is that, nay, Naruto-kun?" Naruto yelled, gesturing to the door, Hey look, the third Hokage." Nobody took him seriously, so Fu and Ten gradually withdrew so they wouldn't be caught in the beating the blonde was going to get. Ehem. The blonde Jinchuriki was saved by a voice at the door. The third Hokage at the door caught everyone's attention. Ino remarked, "That is extremely ironic." Shikamaru raged, "More like pure damn coincidence. Goddamn probability and its stupid 1:100 ratios. Only Naruto." With a collective, Hokage-sama, the Jonin stepped forward to welcome their leader. To stop the room from moving, he raised a hand. There was no place for shenanigans in his severe voice as he said, "All of you, listen to me carefully. Everything that Naruto has spoken in this room is to be kept between yourselves. Naruto and Naruto alone is allowed to divulge this information to anyone else. To disobey this order is to go against Konoha itself, and there will be no hesitation in executing full punishment, even on genin." The Hokage recoiled at the harshness of his words, seeing the terrified expressions on everyone's faces. Stress was undoubtedly the cause, but he ought to have at least made an effort to relax before going in. Ibiki had already told him everything that had happened, and he was, to put it mildly, incensed. The mere thought of Orochimaru's ability to sneak into the village and even the Forest of Death while avoiding capture was enough to give the old man a concussion. Standing near Naruto once more, Fu called, "If it's any comfort, I can reveal that I'm the Jinchuriki of the seven-tailed stag beetle." The news of another Jinchuriki shocked the genin once more, but the surprise was fleeting. It seems that finding another wasn't too difficult after learning about the first one. "It's no secret in our village, so I guess it really doesn't matter anyway." The Hokage gave a headshake. "That was information that could compromise your village's security. I advise that you refrain from doing such things, even around allies." Fu cast a shamed glance down. The only real reason she had done it was to follow Naruto's example of acceptance. People who accepted a Jinchuriki for being a person made her very happy. Well, these Konoha shinobi were much more tolerant than the Omegakure. Sarutobi addressed Fu once more, saying, "Now I understand that you have requested a meeting with me." The mention of a meeting made Vosh tense. "Yes. We would very much like." His foot caught on a loose strap of his trench coat as he walked toward the Hokage. He staggered forward, made a 90-degree turn, and then tried to regain his balance. When his fall was broken up by Kurenai's chesta, the room went dead silent. Asuma's mouth opened wide, and he dropped his cigarette. The woman's blush was so intense that it embarrassed Hinata. As Vosh thrashed his hands until they hit the two mounds between which his face was buried, the situation only grew worse. As Vosh's muffled voice said, "What air essay? What are these?" Kurenai received multiple squeezes. The earth started to tremble. Slowly, Vosh leaned up, his gaze moving past two enormous breasts covered in cloth to the furious face of Konoha's youngest Jonin. There was a checkmark. Hey. Vosh squeezed the woman again, trembling. "You perverted motherfucker." Every onlooker nearby was sent crashing into walls on all sides of the room by the explosion that followed the most epic uppercut Kurenai had ever delivered in her life, a move that would soon be known as the Shin Shoryuken in future generations. But despite the black burn marks on the ground that demonstrated the Jonin's unbridled power, there was an unaltered area of ground surrounding the object of her feminine wrath. Despite the devastation caused by Kurenai, Vosh and the Hokage were unharmed. Vosh called out, about that meeting. The Hokage promptly threw them out of the room. With a growl, Kurenai started to stomp off, using more profanity than most people have ever learned in their lives. From the wreckage, the AIM team and the remaining Konoha 12 members, along with their Jonin senseis, started to emerge. Anko leaned on Naruto after they were all upright and verified to be alive. "Hey Naruto-kun. Remember that list of people I said I was scared of?" Naruto gave a nod. "Put Kurenai-chan at the top." Beyond the Hokage's tower, the trail was empty. There were either dead or dying trees on either side of the road. The ground was covered in broken leaves that crunched softly under her feet, and only her feet. She had observed some time ago that Ibiki made no noise at all, and when she looked back at his footsteps, she could see that the leaves beneath them had not changed. Kin pondered the amount of chakra control required to accomplish such a feat. As though reading her thoughts, Ibiki said, "You'll learn." All the girl could do was nod her head in mild fear. The path ended abruptly as they went farther down the road, and the commotion of the village faded away behind them. What lay ahead of them now appeared to be miles and miles of dead trees. She shuddered. She felt, subconsciously, a sense of loneliness. Kin immediately followed Ibiki as he leapt up into the trees. Her first step broke one of the nearly paper-thin branches, nearly sending her crashing to the ground below. Fortunately, she was near enough to the tree's body to use her hand to grasp it and then apply chakra to adhere to it. At first, it went too quickly, and she ended up slightly skinning her hand. The bleeding was not severe, so the pain was only a throbbing pulse. Ibiki was standing a few trees in front of Kin, staring at him boredly. He didn't really expect her to get it right away. At least her quick reflexes allowed her to regain her balance before she hit the ground, which pleased him. The journey to Anbu headquarters only became more difficult from there, so she would need that. The training he would be subjecting the girl to was far more extensive than this. It served only as a precautionary zone in case a genin or chunin happened to wander through. Kin genuinely wanted to know, Ibiki-sama, how am I supposed to follow you? She would never be able to know the answer on her own. There were no on-field chakra control exercises that she was aware of that would allow her to control just enough chakra to move through such thin branches. Without moving to assist the girl, Ibiki asked, "You do know the water walking technique, right?" Kin gave a nod. Water has a surface thinner, or just as thin as these branches. The only difference is that there is more of it. The density and mass is much greater. Now think about the regular tree branches that you usually traverse. Due to the rough terrain and the fact that each branch is a different shape and size, what do? Kin paused to reflect. You change the amount and flow of chakra to each branch, because when you're moving, you'll never know if a branch is weak or not, so you don't want to overload a smaller branch with too much chakra and have it explode under your feet. Yes. The principle for tree walking in the first lesson is easiest. Standing on a single tree and single tree branch does not need such consideration. However, when traveling through the tree networks, split-second calculations and decisions need to be made, which in truth, makes tree climbing much harder than water walking. On water, you use a constant flow of chakra to stay on top of it, but since there is a mass of water beneath you at all times, you never truly need to regulate your chakra, unless the water is greatly disturbed. Though it didn't really help her from hanging off the side of the dying tree, Kin was pleased that she had correctly answered Ibiki's question. The message was communicated by the bewildered look she was giving Ibiki. Think of the density of each branch. When you travel amongst larger trees, you can use more chakra, but since these branches are smaller than our fingers, you are going to need to use the bare minimum amount of chakra possible. And I'm not going to tell you it's easy either. To be able to use as little chakra as possible to perform actions that you usually use more for is anything but simple. Kin let out a moan. What exactly was Ibiki trying to say? You would need to have as much chakra control as a Hyuga and more to be able to do something like that. For her, it was just about impossible. When Ibiki started to walk away from her, she yelled, "Hey, wait, where are you going?" Ibiki paused and turned around. "There's a clearing 200 meters from here. You have an hour to reach it or I'll be escorting you to a torture and interrogation cell as an enemy of Konoha. If you want to live until tomorrow, you'd better get a move on." He then disappeared from Kin's view. The heart of the dark-haired girl pounded rapidly. "You're joking," she screamed. "Quiet. Seriously, you're joking, right?" The teams had been relocated to the tower's main room following Kurenai's brief outburst. A huge pair of hands stood on the far side of the room, across from the door, and viewing platforms were seated on either side. Kurenai herself had gone in search of the Hokage and Vash, determined to inflict some sort of harm on the man. Anko herself refused, claiming that perverts should be put in their proper place, but Asuma had dragged Guy and Kakashi to assist in stopping the woman. She glared at Kakashi, who had just started reading his Icha Icha book, which didn't help either. Well kiddies, since Hokage Sama hasn't said anything about postponing the exams or anything, you all just got a free pass to the next round. The genin were now seated on the room's floor in a large circle. In the midst of them, Anko was serving as a makeshift proctora or, as she put it, a babysitter until Hayate could arrive. You all have got an entire day until the next part of the exams are announced, so what the hell are we going to do? We can't leave the tower, I'm not bringing any of you little bastards anything to eat, and I'm pretty sure the only bathroom is in a restricted area. Train danced around as though he needed to go to the bathroom and called out, "Shit, really?" Ino inquired, "Anyo, sensei, where'd Naruto-kun go?" As everyone started to look around, they discovered that the blonde shinobi had actually vanished. Anko turned to face a corner where she knew an Anbu was waiting and exclaimed, "What the hell? Did he go with the other Jonin?" An Anbu in a cat mask said, "No ma'am. He's in the next room preparing himself for his meetings." She crouched in front of Anko and silently surveyed the genin. For more reasons than she could count, they were suspicious of her, but she knew that her status was the primary one. In practically every area of the village, the Anbu was constantly present. They were probably thinking about how much she knew about them. In all honesty, however, she didn't know much. Until today, she was not a field operator. The majority of her time had been spent training under Ibiki and occasionally Anko at Anbu headquarters. Anko made the command, "Hey Neko. Remove your mask." Neko's expression conveyed how surprised she was to hear Anko give her such an order. She didn't say it, though. It would be tantamount to treason for an Anbu to question an order. Her hesitancy, though, was sufficient to convey to Anko that she disapproved of the directive. Neko slowly raised her hands to her mask and said, "Yi. Yes ma'am." Even the other Anbu who was observing seemed to sympathize with her suffering, and she could feel the tension rising. Anbu were typically demoted when they were told to take off their mask. Anko didn't have that authority, but she could still command them to take off their mask and risk their lives by revealing who they were. When Anko noticed how slowly the woman in front of her was moving, she said, "Neko, you didn't get the memo, did you?" Neko hesitated, tilting her head sideways in perplexity. "Memo?" Holding her head, Anko sighed. "Go back to headquarters and check your missions. Ibiki should be sending your sister to take your place. Come back immediately and stay with Naruto-kun in case these brats try to do something they'll regret." "Hey!" sounded the cries of the majority of the genin in her direction. She laughed and pushed Neko away. Tenten's question was, "Why does Naruto want to have meetings with us?" The special Jonin pointed to Naruto's own team, Ino, and Hinata, saying, "I assume he simply wants to speak to a few of you in private, and vice versa." Sasuke and Sakura got up and moved away from the group. When Sasuke turned to face the girl, he saw that her head was lowered and that her short hair obscured her face, making it impossible for him to read her expression. For years, but particularly in the last few years, the girl in question has been burdened by the guilt she felt for her actions. The only thing that came to mind was how she could actually atone for what she had done. Sasuke called out to her, but it didn't get her attention. "Sakura." He and she both instinctively stopped walking, but neither of them acknowledged their inactivity. Sasuke smirked a little but shook his head. "Sakura, me and Naruto want to take you on a three-way date." Sasuke briefly believed that even such a statement had no impact. But the girl passed out right there, no less than 3 seconds later. Now, when he looked at her face, it looked like a lecherous old man he was certain he would meet someday, complete with eerie smirk. "Man, is everyone I know a pervert?" The room's door opened before Sasuke could respond emphatically to his own query. A clone said, "Sasuke and Sakura, the boss will see you now." When Sasuke realized Sakura wouldn't be waking up on her own, he moaned and picked her up bridal style, drawing sly grins from some of the other genin. Sasuke turned away, flushed. With a faint smile concealed, he called, "Oh shut up, it's not how it looks." With seriousness, Neji said, "Oh right, you're gay." There was a brief silence before one of the ANBUs who were hidden started laughing, which enthralled the others in the room. Before he blasted Hyuga and their newly discovered sense of humor and stormed out of the room, Sasuke's blush doubled and turned red with embarrassment. With a flush that never went away, he carried Sakura into the next room over and saw Naruto seated behind a desk, with Anbu carrying documents and placing them in filing cabinets. Sasuke initially thought he had entered the Hokage's office and that the fourth himself was seated in front of him. He walked forward and sat Sakura in one of the 3 chairs that were in front of the desk, taking the next one for himself after pausing to process the shock of seeing this. Naruto. What is all this? I don't know. I walked in while they were filing stuff and refused to leave. Two Anbu stopped working at that point to give Naruto what were probably glares behind their masks. This is Ibiki. Sama's office. You better hope he doesn't come back while you're playing Hokage. One of them said something. While observing the perverted smile on the unconscious Pinkette's face, Naruto questioned, whatever. Well, what happened to her? Sasuke's mouth closed tightly and he turned his head away, his cheeks turning pink again. Through his gritted teeth, Sasuke snarled, nothing that will be repeated today. Naruto simply gave a shrug. So what did you two want to talk about? Sasuke gave Naruto a perplexed look. You were the one who started putting together meetings. I said what I had to. I guess you really only need to talk to her. Sakura would wake up in her sleep, almost as if by some divine decree. With a small, satisfied smile on her face, she rubbed her tired eyes and gave a cute little yawn. The images of her dream came flooding back to her when she realized who she was with. Yeah, what a wonderful dream. I can't believe I went on a three-way date with Sasuke-kun and Na. The fiery red that was Sakura's being as she nearly fainted again from the visions of her dreams. Was far more intense than the pink on Sasuke's face. She sat bolt upright and called, WH. What's going on here? She avoided making eye contact with either of the other shinobi, instead glancing between them. Naruto gestured for the pink-haired girl to continue, saying, questions people. We don't have all day. I'd like to get some sleep before the next part of the Chunin exam. Sakura immediately became sober after being reminded of their current predicament, only to be depressed by the things she had to talk to Naruto about. Even the Anbu who were moving around the room could feel the fear that descended upon Sakura, and many of them paused their work to listen to the impending conversation. Sakura placed her hands in her lap and lowered her head once more. I'm sorry Naruto. For everything. The way I treated you back then, and the things I do and say to you now too. Damn it Sakura, I thought I said I forgave you already. Seriously, to be one of the smartest genin, you really act slow sometimes. I think you get that from Ino. She felt like hitting him for interrupting her, laughing at his taunting of Ino, and getting angry at his insult. The greatest part of her heart, however, was telling her to simply thank him and smile. She slammed her hands over her mouth as soon as she said, Arigato, Naruto-kun. When she had called him that, Naruto had recoiled. I'm sorry. It's fine. Just, not really used to hearing that, especially from you. Sasuke gave an eye roll. As if Hinata hasn't called you that enough, now that 10-10 Girl and Ino have started. You've got almost as big a fan club as I do now. Oh god no. Cried Naruto in desperation. A chill went through him as he imagined hordes of crazed fangirls pursuing him. I'd rather angry mobs with pitchforks again. The Anbu in the room tensed at that statement as well, and there was a brief pause. They gradually returned to their work, deciding it would be best to ignore the conversations that followed. They were fully aware of Naruto's fate and had occasionally turned a blind eye. Now that they saw how the boy had been developing, they felt regret. Their admiration for the boy was further cemented when they heard the revelation in the adjacent room. At one time or another, they had all been at fault. It took the following generation to realize what they had long denied. Sasuke tightened his jaw. If you want to get payback, I'll help. No Sasuke. That's not the way I want to do things. If you've noticed, some people actually act different now. I'm not going to put myself as low as them just to get a moment of satisfaction. I'll work above them and eventually reach a satisfaction that no one can deny me, one that will last for years to come. Naruto's expression made Sasuke reflect on himself. Was it really worth trying to kill Itachi? He was aware that it wouldn't bring his family back, but the anger he experienced every time he thought about his brother made his vindictive attitude seem even more legitimate. Sakura, we can try to mend our friendship later. Same with you Sasuke. For now, we should focus on the exams. Both of them nodded, and the three of them were pleased that their team had somewhat reunited. Naruto turned away as they stood, a tiny tear starting to form in his eye. He was prepared to sever his relationship with them both, but they had changed their minds on their own after a short period of time. As they listened to the conversations, the Anbu slowed down their work. Another came into the room in a flurry of leaves. It was a long-haired woman with a leather jacket around her waist, black leather capri shorts, and a black leather sleeveless vest. The woman had the largest chest he had yet to see in Konoha, and Naruto raised an eyebrow while doing his best not to get a nosebleed. The woman's voice was quiet as she said, Uzumaki-san, Anko has assigned me to watch over you during these meetings. Something was bothering her, but she didn't appear upset. I don't really need anyone to watch me. I trust most of the others. By the way, what's your name? The woman cast her gaze downward. Tifa. That's all I can tell you. Naruto dismissed the woman's actions with a shrug. The door opened once more after a few seconds. Naruto was surprised when Ino entered alone. Hey Ino, what's up with you? Holding her arms behind her back, Ino blushed slightly. She had never seen Tifa before, so she looked at her strangely without making eye contact with Naruto. Naruto-kun. I want to say sorry. Not you too. Okay, if you're just going to be apologizing about things that happened years ago, I forgive you already. I don't hold grudges. Well, not against petty stuff. At first, Ino was on the verge of losing her temper, but she soon calmed down. She shook her head, her blush rising once more as she noticed Naruto's childlike grin. Naruto-kun. You should really let people apologize. Even if you've already forgiven them, maybe they haven't forgiven themselves. Naruto appeared truly taken aback. I hadn't thought of it like that. Ino laughed. There's the Naruto-kun I know. Naruto was the one blushing now. He gave his cheek a sheepish scratch and then gave Ino a worried look. His eyes made her smile waver. Ino. Is there something you want to tell me? Other than apologizing, I don't know. I still don't understand what I want to do after this. The first thing was making amends for the things I've done with you. I want to be your friend again, Naruto-kun. And maybe even. Both genin fell silent, and the room was illuminated by their red. As she watched the scene, even Tifa blushed a little. Happy children. For a shinobi, finding love is difficult. I can't make promises, Ino. Me and Hinata, Chan have already decided to be together later. With her head twitching at the information, Ino questioned, but not now? No, not now but. With finality, Ino declared, then you're mine for now. Ino. Chan, I don't think. And you called me Ino. Chan. It's settled. I'll see you later, Naruto-kun. Ino left the room before he could respond, blowing him a kiss. Tifa, Naruto, and the other Anbu all blinked. Naruto questioned, what? Just happened. Tifa grinned, revealing a cunning side of herself that was hidden behind her mask. You, my friend, just got a girlfriend. A headstrong one at that. The head of Naruto struck the desk. Kami, I'm going to die before the end of the day. Why is that, Naruto-kun? Hinata, Shino, and Kiba appeared as the door opened. With her adorable smile that Naruto had grown accustomed to seeing in place of the permanent frown that had dominated her face for the majority of the exam, Hinata appeared to be back to her former self. No reason. Hey. Naruto's perspiration stopped when he received lethal looks from Shino and Kiba. Ehem. Well, I don't know what else I have to discuss with you three, but you're here so. Instantly, Hinata called out, Naruto-kun, I don't want to wait anymore. Her face reddened, and she clasped her hands over her mouth in the same manner as Sakura. Once more, Naruto's head struck the desk. As Tifa was in near hysteria, holding her sides laughing while the other Anbu simply laughed with her, Naruto moaned, death. I knew it. Kami wants me gone. I'm guessing you heard Ino. Chan then? Despite her pout, Hinata nodded. She blushed, but Naruto could see that she was also upset about this. Naruto-kun, you aren't obligated to be with me. If you want to be with Ino, I can't stop you. But I want you to know that I want to be with you now, even if we aren't exactly where we want to be. Hold on, Hinata. Chan, I didn't say anything like that. Naruto jumped up quickly when he noticed the girl's eyes beginning to well up with tears. Me and Ino. Chan need to work on our friendship. We aren't anywhere near ready to date each other. I think she's still just confused about what she wants to do. In actuality, Naruto felt the same way. He was also unsure of what to do at this point. He didn't want to offend Ino, and she didn't seem to be kidding. However, he had already made the decision to be with Hinata. Even though their current motivation was merely to keep Hinata's opportunity alive. Naruto could only assume that Tenten was also gradually descending since he recalled that Fu was pursuing him. Now that he knew how deep he was, he held his head in frustration. I wish the fox were still around. He was brought back to reality by Hinata's voice, Naruto-kun. And nearly jumped when he noticed that she was standing beside him, leaning in closer and closer. Her lips puckered slightly and her eyes were closed. When he realized what she was doing, his heart began to race in his chest, and he had little time to think, so he decided to tightly close his own eyes. After just a brief moment, He experienced her lips' delicate touch for himself, and his heart started to calm. Naruto put his arms around Hinata's small waist as she started to lean in. Shino startled the two who had ventured into their own little world by clearing his throat loudly. Ehem. Hinata had somehow landed on Naruto's lap, their arms wrapped around one another. The kiss had become so intense that Naruto was unable to think, only concentrating on the smooth glide of her tongue, the gentle touch of her lips, and the growing heat between them. Kiba grinned and called, "Damn, you two move fast." Shino corrected, eliciting groans from the new couple and laughter from everyone else in the room. Not really, Kiba-san. It did take them over 3 years to finally get together. Kiba took the initiative after everything had calmed down and Hinata had retreated to join her team. "We've got your back, Naruto, no matter what. Even if Mom or the others are too blind to see that you aren't the Kyuubi, we know that you aren't. Besides, if we didn't, Hinata would make us see the truth." After a brief glance down, Naruto grinned at Kiba. Surely the boy had matured since the academy. He was happy to see that he had grown more level-headed and that he could still think for himself. But it probably came from Akamaru and his sister. All Kiba needed to decide what he wanted to do or not was the need to protect his partner and family. Naruto was truly delighted, saying, "Thank you guys. You don't know how much this all means to me." He couldn't recall ever having so many people accept him for who he was. In addition to Wave Country, it increased the value of wanting to keep this place and these people safe. Anko showed up at the door as the three were getting ready to depart for the next group. "Brats, Hayate's here. He's going to tell you all what to do. You can finish up with the rest of them later. Tifa, let's go. We've got business to take care of back at headquarters for now." Tifa called, and she and Anko disappeared. "Yes ma'am." With a shrug, Naruto got up and walked back to the main room with the other team. After entering, they noticed that everyone was arranged in straight lines, with 4 gaps left for them to slide into. A weary-looking Chunin holding a clipboard stood in front of the group. When the group finally arrived, he coughed into his fist. "As you may have heard, my name is Hayate Gecko. Cough, cough. I'm the proctor for the next part of the exam. However, because of certain circumstances, cough, cough. You all have been granted a pass into the next part and this part of the exam is still ongoing. Rooms have been prepared. Cough, cough, cough. For you all, cough. And you will be required to stay there for the remainder of this portion of the exam. I advise. Cough, cough. You all get as much rest as possible and report back to this room. Cough, cough, at noon tomorrow." The sickly Chunin caused the genin to perspire. He seemed to find that explanation difficult to understand. They pondered what had caused the man's illness. Having to go to bed didn't bother them either. In any case, it appeared to be around 10 o'clock at night. A comfortable bed overlooking the forest and a pleasant shower were welcome on any given day. The teams all followed a Chunin to their rooms after being dismissed, and no more words were exchanged. One for boys and one for girls. The room for girls, it was clear that the prepared room was an infirmary. As of right now, it appears that Anko was telling the truth when she stated that there were no restrooms in any unrestricted areas. Although there was a shower area, it was open. From what they could see, there was no bathroom area. However, that was also acceptable. Ninjas needed to be adaptable with such things, and although they were technically inside, they were in an unidentified location that could have easily been the wilderness. "Well, let's get acquainted," Fu exclaimed as she leapt onto one of the room's numerous beds. Her radiant smile and assured demeanor made her resemble Naruto. As Hinata, Sakura, and Ino perspired, Tenten laughed at her friend. This was their first chance to get a close-up look at the girl. Like Naruto, she appeared younger than them, but perhaps that was just her height. They were beginning to find it frightening how much the two appeared to be alike, even in terms of posture, and her manner even made them think of Naruto. Trying to be courteous, Hinata said first, "Hello Fu-san, I'm Hinata Hyuga. It's nice to meet you." The girl didn't seem all that bad, and Naruto had apparently taken a liking to her. With the help of this girl, Hinata hoped to make a new friend. "I'm Ino Yamanaka." Ino waved to Fu. Sakura remained silent. Fu gave her a lethal glare for which she was unprepared just as she opened her mouth to speak. She was aware that her mention of Naruto in the forest had still angered Fu. Nor could she hold her responsible. She wanted to slam her head against the wall to block out the unreal things she had been saying. She simply avoided making eye contact and remained silent. Tenten held out her hand to Hinata and Ino, attempting to ease the tension that had begun to rise. "Hello to the both of you. I'm Tenten Hiroshi." Ino made fun of Tenten. Tenten blushed when he heard, "We know who you are, Tenten. You graduated 6 months before us. All the girls in our class looked up to you. 1010 held her hands beneath her chin and pictured herself as the devoted big sister to all of the younger girls. Really? I had no idea, she said. It is the result of being a person who is not given enough credit. With the exception of Sakura, Fu shook hands with everyone after descending from the bed. When she saw Sakura leaving toward the other end of the room, a frown appeared on her face. Fu sighed and followed her at a jog. Hey! Fu yelled, initially causing her to recoil. She turned around slowly, but she wouldn't look into Fu's eyes. Fu held her head in exasperation and sighed once more. Even though I'm still pissed at what happened in the forest, if Naruto can forgive you then I guess I have no choice either. My name is Fu, what's yours? Sakura gave the girl a doubtful, perplexed look. Then, the circumstances only made her feelings worse. Even though she had known Naruto for years, there were total strangers who treated him better than she did. Her guilt just came flooding back. She still hadn't forgiven herself, and she believed she wasn't deserving of anyone else's forgiveness either. In light of this, Sakura surprised even herself by embracing Fu rather than shaking the girl's hand. The girl embraced Fu, and her eyes grew wide. Sakura muttered, "Thank you for not being like me. Thank you for not judging Naruto and for actually treating him the way he deserves to be treated." The only response Fu could think of at the moment was, what? Her brain fizzled from trying to understand what was happening, and her head hung to the side, her eyes swirling with confusion. Beside 1010, Ino murmured to herself, "It's amazing how one incident can alter one's perspective." Ino had a single tear in her eye when the older girl looked at her. "I have no clue what you all are so solemn about, but I want to take a bath. Anyone want to join me?" The 4 other girls in the room paused at 1010's words, then gradually became as red as tomatoes. When the younger 4 suddenly started bleeding from the nose, the girl with the bun raised an eyebrow. "What? Was it something I said? Room for boys?" Similar to the girls' room, the boys' room was a sizable medical facility. As far as they could tell, there was still no bathroom, so they would continue to use the forest. Instead of talking like the girls, the boys immediately claimed their beds. Shikamaru took the one next to his, while Naruto took the one near the door. While Train and Yurio were beside Sasuke's, Sasuke took the one across from Naruto. Shino and Kiba took the 2 furthest away, while Choji took the one next to Shikamaru. The boys all fell asleep without speaking to one another. One of the hidden Anbu questioned, "What the hell was that?" The other simply gave a shrug. The Death Forest. With both scrolls in hand, the Sand Trio walked through the forest until they finally saw the tower. It was much quieter and, surprisingly, less bloody than they had anticipated. Furthermore, it appeared that no other teams were present. They reasoned that since there were no signs of anyone else nearby, the tension in the air was unfounded. But as they moved slowly in the direction of the objective, the youngest member of the group was muttering under his breath and leaking a little murderous intent. Feeling more at ease than he had all day, Kankuro said, You okay, Gaara? You seem a bit tense." Even though Gaara was growing accustomed to it, it wasn't natural for him to do anything other than reveal his intention to kill. It didn't last for very long. As their younger brother ignored them and continued to walk with his arms folded, Temari's perspiration fell. It would appear to be the typical Gaara to most people. The young Jinchuriki was actually pouting in place of Gaara's typically stoic face, though, and Temari couldn't help but laugh. With a hint of humor in her voice, she said, Poor Gaara. Is it really that serious?" "It's not fair," Gaara said in an even tone that didn't suggest he was upset, but it might as well have come across as a girlish whine to Temari, who was laughing uncontrollably. Kankuro glanced confusedly between the two. What's not fair? Seriously, I'm lost here, and I know I'm not the sharpest knife in the crayon box, but there seems to be some important context missing here." Temari dismissed her brother's remark. Ignoring them both, Gaara accelerated her pace in the hopes of meeting Naruto at the tower. Temari placed an arm around Kankuru's shoulder and slowed slightly. "I know why he's upset." "Why?" "Because we didn't get the first scene in this chapter like we did in the last 2. Gaara looked back with the same stoic pout on his face as the 3 of them stopped walking. "It's just not fair." Frustrated, Kankuro held his head. "I seriously hate everything right now." When the 3 arrived at the tower, Temari concluded with a cheerful chirp, and apparently someone else hates the 4th wall. "The girls' room," Fu exclaimed. "Holy crap! This bath is huge." Upon seeing the enormous bath located in the tower, Anko was also discovered to have lied about the restrooms. They were in a space that resembled a locker room on the other side of the bathtub. Before the person who constructed the tower realized that it wasn't a good idea to have a resort in the middle of what is known as the Forest of Death, the tower had probably been used as a commercial resort. 1010 exclaimed, "Wow! Even the public bath back in town isn't this big." Sakura, Ino, and Hinata simply watched in awe, just like the other two girls. As they approached the locker rooms, the small group of girls marveled at the level of hospitality that seemed to be ingrained in the establishment's design. This one small space actually did seem like a place where they could unwind, even though the other halls and the outside seemed like a place for ninja. 1010 was still admiring the surrounding architecture in the locker room as she combed her hair. She turned to face the girls behind her, who had fallen silent, as it was finished and flowing past her shoulders. Their astonished looks caused her to raise an eyebrow. "What? Something on my face?" The first person to point at her was Ino. 1010. "Senpai, your hair," said Hinata. The girls all yelled, "It's gorgeous," together, once more receiving praise from her peers that she wasn't used to. 1010's face flushed pinker than her shirt. It's nothing special. It's actually a mess most of the time, which is one reason I keep it in buns." "What the hell is wrong with you?" Ino yelled as she hurried over to 1010's side and went through her smooth hair. "Senpai, you are one of the most beautiful girls in this village. Why the hell are you still single?" The other girls also nodded, showing interest in the situation. However, 1010 shook her head in response to the inquiries. There was a trace of sadness in her voice as she said, "It's not really something I want to talk about right now. Or at least, let's get comfortable in the bath first, okay?" She seemed content to share the information with her new friends, though, she did see Fu regretfully rubbing her shorter hair. "What's the matter, Fu?" When 1010 said that, Fu jumped. She gave a sheepish smile. "Oh, nothing. Just remembering something, that's all." After some convincing on the part of Hinata and Sakura, the girls started to undress, and soon they were all in the spacious bathtub. Since Hinata and 1010 were the most mature of all the girls up to that point, all eyes were on them right away. Sakura and Fu were beside each other in the water, their eyes and noses the only parts above the surface, and they were dejected. Feeling at a natural stage of her feminine development, Ino simply shrugged. The girls were quiet for the first time as they relished the sensation of the water. After a few minutes of acclimating to the water, Ino turned to face 1010, her own hair splaying in the surrounding water. "So what's up, senpai? You never told us why you're still single." 1010 reddened. "Well, the other reason I keep my hair in buns is so I can fight better. The hair only gets in the way when training and can be used against you in a fight." "Yeah, but you have it up even when you're just walking around. Why not take it down when at home or something?" Sakura asked. 1010 answered her after a brief silence. All of the girls gasped when 1010 began, "My mom died when I was really young. Our weapons store started going under once Dad started losing the will to make weapons. First the quality dropped, then the time frame in making the pieces, until Dad had gotten us to the verge of bankruptcy. By the time I was ready to enter the academy, I knew I would have to help him by any means necessary. So I spent all 4 years of the academy learning how to use the forge, and how to make weapons on my own. Once my father saw how much time I was spending in the forge instead of out with friends, he started to gain some of his spirit back. He wanted to be there for me and it made me happy that I could get him back on his feet." With a sigh, a melancholy smile appeared on her face. "But because of what I didn't have any friends. I was always working, studying, and training, even while home, and I got so used to my hair being up in buns. I never had any friends outside of Lee and Neji, if you can call him a friend. I've never been to a birthday party, I've never played at the park. Hell, I guess I've never had a childhood. So of course, I've never had a boyfriend. All the boys thought I was a workaholic tomboy. Some of them thought I really was a boy." "Why not just take your hair down and show them the truth?" replied Hinata. "I'm not the type to want to prove something to worthless people. Besides, the last reason I keep these buns up is to remind myself to never stop working to make things better. Not just for my dad anymore, but for everyone else too. I wanted to be the one to make Neji come to his senses, but you beat me to that, Hinata. I'm not mad about that, I'm really grateful, but it reminds me that I had stopped trying at a certain point. I won't stop again." The story brought tears to the eyes of Ino, Sakura, and Fu. The older girl blushed even more as they all hugged 1010 after wading through the water. She wasn't sure how much more she could take. Sakura cooed, "Aw, that's so amazing 1010. Senpai," and Ino nodded in agreement. "You're truly a role model. I wish I would have been like you back in the academy," Ino answered the phone. With her arms wrapped around her waist, Fu rested her head against Tenten's chest. "You're amazing, Chan." It was those words. The water around Tenten started to boil like a hot spring as her face heated up to that temperature. She saw Hinata staring into her own reflection on the water's surface before she could lose herself in her own little world. Tenten recognized the serious expression on her face as self-reverence. She called out, "Are you okay, Hinata?" which caused the other girls to focus on the Hyuga heiress as well. Hinata took a while to reply. After a few moments, she let out a sorrowful sigh and grinned contrively as she glanced up at the others. "I'm alright. Just thinking." Tenten interrupted the conversation, aware that she was to blame for the change in tone. "So, you all wanted to know about me. What's up with your love lives? Any of you have boyfriends?" All four of the younger genin turned red at her words and, so to speak, went to their own corners of the bath. Ironically, all four of the girls had the same person on their minds, though one of them also had another person in mind. With a cunning grin, Ino began, "I have a boyfriend." Taking note, Hinata smiled slyly herself. "Yep. And he's a wonderful kisser, Ino." When Ino saw Hinata's narrowed eyes and cunning smirk, her jaw dropped open and her eyes widened. But Hinata was kidding when she said, "Don't worry, Ino. Chan, I'm sure Naruto-kun wouldn't mind us sharing." Nevertheless, her words caused a reaction in every woman in the bathtub. Hinata abruptly regretted attempting to be cunning as she observed the symbolic light bulbs that were shining above the heads of all the other girls.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.